I get affected, and all of a sudden I'm out of body, and I'm seeing the slaughtering, and I'm seeing the stuff that's going on, and I don't speak Mongolian, so it's
Yeah,
difficult. I don't have any translators with me.
yeah.
So they're looking at me and I'm, vibrating like this and I'm shaking and I can't walk. And I see the things that are going to happen to me in the temple before they happen. And they're unusual things. It's just that while I sat there, I saw that the master of the temple was going to take this thing. I think it's called a Vajra. I'm very bad with the names of everything, but it's a Buddhist tool that has two little balls at the end, like, and a little thing in the middle, and it's used in Buddhist. Um, I don't know if it's prayer or exactly what, but in it, I saw that the monk was took it and he puts it in front and puts it on my third eye.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and seafood Taoist Master Sun Qing, and I have an incredible guest here today, which really goes deep into things that are all centered around my level of consciousness and things that I've explored for many decades. And this is one of the reasons why I find her incredible, is her insider sensory perception. Gail Hayssen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really, really good. I'm good now because we need to experience conversation with more OGs like yourself. Abbreviation, if anyone doesn't know what that means, the original gangster, the original good badass, where this stuff is beyond
Called
conceptual.
that before.
Right, right, because it's you have to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk, and this is where a lot of the stuff that we speak on, that I've been teaching people these ancient indigenous practices for well over 30 years. And
Wow.
so the out of body experience, astral projection, things of that nature is a progression and a developmental skill. But if you want a crash course, go and run out in front of a bus. I don't know. You're going to get it realized one way or another. But so I would love you to share with our audience a little bit of your backstory and how you got to this point right now.
Well, I'm not sure what this point right now is, but I'm here at this point right now. And I've experienced, if we're discussing paranormal or astral projection or these kind of things, I started experience those as a child. I was recently on a show called Unraveling the Universe with Ben Sinclair, and he had Dean Radin on, and he asked Dean Radin about me, and so I got to hear Dean Radin speak about me on the show, and I'm just going to share what he said because I think it was true. He said that they came upon me as a natural psychic, and I've never really used that word psychic until Dean kept telling me that I was psychic. But he explained that he said, well, I can't exactly explain to you how Gail does this, but she just comes in the lab and gives us data when we need it. And he said, but she does it all naturally. She's not trained in any way. And that's about what I would want to say about myself is that I have these, some people call them gifts, or what, I think everybody has these things. So I never think of it quite like that. But whenever I have any kind of experiences that are of the paranormal or of different consciousness levels, I always feel grateful for them, and I always honor when they come. As I don't ever feel like I expect all these things are going to happen to me, or that this is going to always work, or this is going to be just like this. I just take what flows in, and my life has been a constant series of stories and experiences and events from since I was a little girl until the present, that involve dreams that have prophetic, information about the future, dreams that have changed my life and brought other cultures into my life, being able to communicate telepathically. I've been tested at the Washington University Hospital. My brain was, I have a photo here of my brain if you want to see, doing telepathy with another person in a totally another room, and I'm in an fMRI. So we were able to prove that was only the second team that ever did this particular experiment in the world. And it showed, we were able to show that there was a change of blood flow in the brain when I was doing telepathic communications. So it's things that I've lived with, but that have also been studied by some scientists. But most of the work I've done over the last, since 1998, has been with Dr. Dean Radin and Russell Targ. So those are the two main guys that I've done all these things with over the last over 20 years. Prior to that, my childhood, my sisters made fun of me, or I'd say, "Oh, I just dreamt this about la la la," and they would say, "Oh, you're always you." So they'd make fun of you. But it got to a point where if I didn't give them a dream and tell them about who their baby was going to be or what was going to happen, they started to be concerned. So finally, one day, my sister said, "I said, well, you always make fun of me." She said, "Well, you didn't have a dream this time." I said, "Well, I'm not telling you my dreams because you make fun of me." So she said, "Well, I need a dream about my next baby." And it was her third child. And I often have dreams about the sex of the child before the person has them, or my own. So I had a dream. I said, "All right, I'll ask for a dream," which I've also had interesting experiences with, was asking for a dream when I go to bed. So for listeners out there, just try these things. You don't have to go to any class or take any schooling. Just be open to this in your mind that, hey, I'm going to ask for a question. I'm going to tell the question at night before I go to sleep to the dream world, and I'm going to ask for an answer. So I asked the dream world, what's my sister Lori going to have? What kind of baby? What is she going to have? And in the dream, the telephone rings. And for me, I always know, because I'm old school, it was no cell phones and things. It's the old coil telephone. And if it comes on a coil telephone in my dreams, I know that it's true information. So I pick up the phone in the dream, and the phone in the dream, and she says in the dream, "It's a girl, 8 pounds, 6 ounces." So I hang up in the dream. And then that morning I wake up and I call my sister Lori and I say, "Lori, you're going to have a girl, 8 pounds, 6 ounces." And she says, "All right, we'll see." Her and her husband go to have the baby about 3 weeks after this dream. And when the doctor comes to her and says, "It's a girl, 8 pounds, 6 ounces," she's called me up after that. And she said, "I'm not going to make fun of your dreams anymore." So, in your family, it's a different thing when they're used to you being like this. When you maybe tell that to a stranger or someone, they think, "Oh, but it's just like any famous person that's an actor or a singer. The children make fun of them. That's part of their job." So my kids are also the same way, where they know that I know information about them and things that are going on without being told. They still will make fun of me about it. And you have 6 kids, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's that's the interaction that you have with your immediate family. My wife has been immersed in it ever since we've been together, and she's got her own intuitive skill set. But you develop this stuff. All my kids are extremely highly access they high access high levels of consciousness. And so, if it's a group healing, whatever it is, they'll instantly they're not being controlled by some type of like system. I don't allow people to pollute my child's mind, so I teach them at home.
That's
So then
wonderful.
that simplicity, yeah, oh, I need to do a healing on my brother, boom, done. Healing on my sister, boom, done. Oh, this, that, whatever. And you can synchronize that realization when they're not coming from this limited viewpoint where their perception of reality is being controlled by this is reality, this is not reality. Well, says who? I'm telling you that. Well, that's not enough in this world. It has to be validated by what is your truth, and your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. And then authoritarians will freak out and go, "Oh, you can't possibly empower someone with the idea that they can have their own thoughts and believe in what they believe in." But I think you and I both know this is absolutely fundamentally the present moment that makes it realized.
Well, this is a wonderful gift you're giving your children, and I'm grateful to my dad, who's no longer with us, but he gave that to all us 5 kids, which was to be able to think on your own and to never accept everything that's being given to you as your truth, and always have critical thinking about what you're being told. And I'm very grateful to him for all the crazy things he brought into our lives, because we would have never been exposed. We had an unconventional life, and I'm grateful for every crazy moment of it that we had, because it made me to be able to have an open mind about things that I learn and know about today. I hope I tried to do the best like this with my children, who are all grown now. And I noticed that my oldest daughter, my first child, she has very intuitive things. She has dreams of, like when there's going to be a catastrophe, she'll dream the fire before it happens the night before, or she'll dream something in a ship that happens, or something that maybe comes in the news. She has these sporadically, and she's very in tune with that part of herself and her intuitive side. My son has a lot of respect for me because he's seen the things that have happened around me. So he's very respectful. My daughter, my youngest, she likes to tease me. But she's always grateful when I'm there for her for something that she might not understand, of the levels of death or losing somebody you love and these kind of things.
Yeah.
So I continued on just as a child having these kind of things. And I was not, since I didn't have a regular type family upbringing, I didn't have anybody squashing any of that. And normally people squash this. My dad was also against public education. And so I finished the ninth grade and that was it. So I didn't have my head filled with a lot of education after that. I'm his only child who didn't go to high school and college, but actually, my one brother didn't go to college either. But he really taught us to think with our minds about what's going on around to our bodies. He was very interested in health. So health was his most important thing, and spirituality. So this came later in his life. He had not led that type of life up until the points when we were grown children. He was a wild guy doing all kinds of things. But in his later parts of life, that's what his focus always was on: health and spirituality, or what he would say, doing the right thing, or, doing what's the right thing. So that was a good background. And as a teenager, when I'd left New York, where we all grew up, and I came out to California, my dad had left and was living in a pickup truck. And we drove around California. He was looking for the ideal place for us to live. It was 1969, 70. It was a lot of activity going on in San Francisco here. And we got involved in one of the self-help group things, which only people that are a little older know what was going on in the 70s, but the self-help thing was big. And gurus were popping up everywhere, and everybody was leading this group here. And there was some guy came from India and was doing this, and so they came from all over, and people were flocking to all these retreats and workshops and things to get in touch with their nature and themselves, and be a better person, and do things to improve their life. So we got involved with this group called Mind Dynamics, and I was 15 at the time. I think I was 15 and a half, or I might have been 16 when I graduated the course. But we were the second course that was given in this Mind Dynamics, which was built around all of these other different, like Rosicrucians and all other different spiritual things. They like pulled out different stuff from all the things to make their course. And our teacher was a man who was well known back in those days, named Werner Erhard. And he had founded an organization on his own after called EST, and then something else called the Forum. And thousands of people took these courses from this man. We were in the second course, and we became devotees, just like you hear about. That's that kind of a cult kind of a thing. And everybody worked for free, and you couldn't do enough for this man. And you put him up on a pedestal. He was the guru. And he was teaching what I came to find out later was remote viewing. I mean, the names for it now, which wasn't the names then, it was his course, right? But he was taking these things from all the other people that he learned stuff from and turning them into exercises and things for you to do, how to learn how to sleep better, how to heal people. Originally, it was all done about healing people. As a teenager, this, for whatever reason, besides loving rock and roll, I happen to love the idea of healing and working with people. So the idea that I could take these people into my workshop that they taught you how to build inside your mind and do healing on these people really was like, I just thought was the greatest thing ever. So I did it for about close to 2 years, all volunteer. And I stopped when I was about 17 and a half. And I would be like either in a person's living room or I'd be on stage in a hotel. I'd either be in front of 40 people or maybe two or 300 people. And they would ask me, they would tell me the name and the age and the city of somebody. And it would all be on some card. And the person who was guiding you through this would have the card. And the person who wrote the card would be sitting in the audience so they could validate whether it was true what you were saying. So they would tell you the name and the age. And then when I first did it, I would only see like, I'd be drawn to things with color. So like I'd look at the person's body and I would be seeing a blackness in the lungs, or I'd see, be drawn to some other part that looked swollen, or things like this. But I would be looking at the whole sort of history of the person. It wouldn't be just their body in that minute. It could also be things that had happened to their body when they were young, like breaking an arm or a leg or this kind of thing. And when I'd finished, I'd have all this information. And I was raised, we had no medical, my dad raised us vegans with no doctors and no dentists. So I had no medical information in my head from anywhere. But I'd come out with prescriptions and I'd say, oh, they're on this medication for blood pressure. I didn't even know what blood pressure, I didn't even know about these things. But the word would come across in the screen in my mind and it would write out what the name of the drug the persons would be on. But that would happen after I had done, like, it's just like anything that you practice at, the more that you do it, the better you got. So I got so good at this that before the phone would ring, I would know who was going to call before it even rang. Before I would get to someone's house, I would see who the people were that were in the house before I would get in there. It got to be where like I wasn't, everything was, I was seeing things before I would walk into them. And I've always wondered, had I not stopped at 18, what would I be like now had I continued doing these continual, we called them cases back then, these continual cases. But I ended up having some very bad physical reactions to this, which is also important to tell your listeners that whenever you do any of this consciousness or work with other people's bodies or healing or any of this kind of work, you have to be sure that you're grounded and protected in your own space before you go out to do these things with other people's bodies. They did not teach this in 1971. They only taught you how to impress people with this, what you would be able to do if you took this course. I was able to do these things within the second day of the 4-day course. You're not supposed to be able to do it till you're 4 days. So, and I was also, me and my brothers were the only two people under 25 years old in this course at that time. It was only the second course ever given, and it was all, middle class, white, working in, companies kind of people. So I would do a lot of healing, like for a whole week. If I had a person that had emphysema, and I would just do these things in my mind to heal, which would be whether it would be putting gold light all over their body or actually seeing myself sort of manually trying to clean out the lungs of the black mass or these kind of things. And one of the persons I did, I think it was the emphysema one, was dying while I was doing this. And I had a experience, and it was my first experience that I'd read about before, but never had the experience of. And for your listeners, it's important to be skeptical about things you hear, but it's also important to know that just because it hasn't happened to you, that doesn't mean it's not real. And so I'd heard of possession before, and I've heard of, demons or whatever, these kind of things. And I just thought it was all, But when it happened to me, where some spirit was attached onto me and I could not get rid of it, and I didn't know what was happening to me, this organization I was involved with did not help me after 2 years of volunteering for them to do hundreds of these cases. So that was when I decided that I would never do anything intentionally like that ever again, and that I would only accept whatever dreams or psychic information or intuition or gut feelings or whatever the words you want to use, those things I would welcome in. And there were plenty of those to keep me busy. But I would never do anything like that formal kind of thing again, because I felt that it was very damaging not to know how to handle what was happening to me and not to get any help from the people who just sort of left you there like that. Until 1998. So over more than 20 years. Let's see, that was 71, 72. So in 1998, a company had been in business in Palo Alto for a few years that was founded by Paul Allen, who was one of the wealthiest men in the world at the time. He was with Bill Gates in the Microsoft. He was the other partner. And my husband, David, was working in the company, and he'd received a email that was sent to all the people in the company. Do you have anyone you know that would be able to be involved with Russell Targ and Dean Radin? Because they'll be working here at this company, and they're going to be doing something called the Phenom Project. And it all had to do with paranormal experiments and different things of statistics they were working on and remote viewing. Well, up until then, I'd never even heard of the word remote viewing. And when my husband read it, it was supposed to be only for employees of the company, because it was a company that they were doing a lot of work where there was a lot of NDAs, and you couldn't, go in there unless you had your special badge, and you couldn't go to certain floors, and, things were kept private because they were doing a lot of work for the future, I guess, in computers and other things. So my husband said, well, my wife doesn't work here, but she does these things all the time, and I have to live with this. And he's been my validator, because when I wake up and I have a dream and I say, uh-oh, Uncle Willie's going to die, and the next thing the phone rings and my sister says, Uncle Willie just died, he's had to live with these continually. So he shared some of these stories with Dean and Russell on the email, and they said, well, we'd like to interview her. So I went in for an interview, and I felt that after all these years that I would be willing to do this kind of work again, because it was for science. There was no money involved, and it had to do with seeing into the future. And I really had never done any of the kind of things that the amount of different tests that I did when I became involved with them, I didn't even know that I was capable of doing the things that I did until I would do these experiments with them. So my remote viewing, you wanted me to tell you about it this way, right? How I got
No, for the audience, she's being held at gunpoint, and we're making her tell the story just the way we want it. No, I'm just kidding.
So I went down to Palo Alto, and I had this interview that was supposed to be an hour, and just like your shows, it went on for many hours. And they had asked me before coming down, they said, we need you to write a list of psychic experiences that you've had happen to you. And I'd never had ever asked me that before, and I'd never ever thought about it. So my niece Valerie was very sweet, and she sat at a computer, and I just kept thinking, oh wait, oh yeah, this thing happened. Oh, remember when that happened? And everything that I could think of, she ended up with 10 pages of, these different little stories. I brought the 10 pages with me, to not knowing that I'd had all these, because nobody ever asked me to document it, And I go into the meeting with them, and as I'm telling them the stories, I'm remembering even more stories. So that's why it kept going on. And there were numerous people there, and Dean later said he wished he had videotaped it. And at the end of the meeting, both Dean and Russell came separately to me and said, we would very much like to work with you if you'd like to come down to do some sessions with us. And they also both separately said to me, you know what, you should write a book. And I'd been told that all my life since I was a teenager, you should write a book. But I always just thought it was because my stories entertain people so much, and they're just saying it to be nice. But when two scientists told me to write a book, it felt like, oh, they're not trying to butter me up or anything, you know? And I went back home and, with Russell's encouragement, took me 6 months and I wrote a book, and it was like 20 years ago, and I never finished the book and I never went any further. And now the book has reemerged again, and I have a publisher that's interested in it, that in April we're going to take a look at a small, medium, at large. That's the title of the book. Adventures of a Psychic Traveler is the little subheading. And I've written from when I was born until the present day, a collection of all these different memoirs, all this story in this memoir. And I'm hoping before 2024 that'll be on Amazon and people will be able to purchase it if they're interested in an unusual life.
You mean 2025, because we're already in 2024.
Right. So I have the book finished except for the last chapter.
Mhm.
And Russell has encouraged me. I've been doing experiments up until the present day. So right now I'm in an experiment for Dean called the Sigil experiment, SIGIL. And he's picked, you had to fill out all these forms, and he's picked 50 people around the world to all do this experiment. I can't tell you what the experiment's about or the outcome of it, because he's not going to tell us until it's finished, so it doesn't interfere with our work of doing it. But it has something to do with, I have this box here that was sent to us, and it has to do with using your mind to interfere with the photon or the heat or affecting the box when it's on. And there's a graph that gets affected by it, and there's a light. And you're supposed to focus on that light, and it really has to do with the power of focus and intention. And you want the light to be white, and you want it to stay bright, but it has many different colors. It has purple and green and a reddish color and a no color at all. And I'm just on my 3 practice sessions, and I'm actually going to start the actual experiment probably tomorrow. And after we all do 10 different sessions, they're all submitted to Dean, and he'll do all the analyzing and spreadsheets, and we'll find out then how we did and what was our outcomes. And the only thing I know in the task is that you're supposed to try and keep the light as bright as you can with your mind. And there's a sound that comes out of the computer at the same time. And the more focused you are, the louder the sound becomes and the brighter the light on the machine becomes. So we'll have to have another episode to tell you what happened, in another couple months.
Have you? So you've been sampling it. So how's it going? Like from a sample perspective?
Well, since I don't have any information except the feedback was you want to keep the sound loud, and you want to keep the lights bright, and you want to get green and white. So far in my 3 practices, my last one yesterday, I don't know if it's I don't know exactly, but for the request, I was able to get the light white for many parts of the session. It takes 20 minutes. And I've always had it at green. I've never had the other colors, and green and white are what you're striving for. And I've had the sound go from like silent to very loud to silent to loud, so I've affected the sound. So that's your feedback when you're doing it. And whenever you're doing these kind of experiments, I don't know if this is for everyone, but I think it is, but I know it is for me. I need the feedback. The feedback gives me something that I need when I'm doing it. So when I see that the light's getting whiter, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing the right task. I don't know what the task is for yet, but as I said, we'll know later when this is all completed and all 50 have, turned, because everyone has a month to do their 50, their 10 trials or their 10 formal tests. And then, so I'm happy to say that I've been doing these experiments since 1998. It's now 2024. And so I just finished this other one with Russell Targ that I was going to show you a little bit about. Am I going along the right ways here? Are we going along the right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So before I start, actually, I'm going to hold up this picture of one of the first times when Dean Russell and I were at the first remote viewing conference. Oh, I guess it's going to be
There we
hard
go.
with reflection. Well, there we
Oh,
go.
wow.
So there's the three of us in the back of a room in Las Vegas when we were at a remote viewing conference.
Wow.
And I have a deep love for both these men. They're not just scientists. Well, they're not scientists to me. They're my dear, dear friends that I
Is
care
your,
very much about.
is your husband aware of this? No, I'm just kidding.
He introduced me to them.
You're-
He knows as much as I do. In fact, my husband just helped on a little computer glitch with Dean for him. So at the end of 2022, we had the whole COVID thing going on for some time.
Mhm.
Russell contacted me and said, I'd like to do a special series of just 13 remote viewings with you. And because we can't meet in person, we'll do it on the computer. And in the beginning, he only wanted to do it by phone. So we didn't actually have the computer involved. And then halfway through, I said, I've been doing all these Zooms and I know how to Zoom. Why don't we do it on Zoom? And then, you can hold up the target after it's done. I can hold up the pictures and we can record it all. So I have about 5 of the 13 sessions recorded on my Zoom, which I'm just going to cherish forever because Russell is the best. They call them monitors, the best monitor of anyone that I've ever done remote viewing with. Everyone I've done remote viewing with, I've had nice and good experiences, but with him, it's always stellar. He just knows how to make you feel comfortable to just get the information that he's looking for. I can't explain it, but other people have commented about it also. He has a special talent and the knack to make the viewer really at ease and give good data. So he said, let's do this. And then after we finished it, it was put into a spreadsheet and they do all their scientific things about it. And he rated each one. So the ratings go from 0 to 7, 7 being your best score. So I've never gotten a 7. I don't know what you have to do to get a 7. But I've gotten many 6s and 5s. So I was very happy with all 13. And I'm just
Wow.
going to give you a sample. I'm going to hold it up to show you. So I had put together a book of, there we go. I had put together this book of all of our remote viewing.
Yeah.
We finished it in, it was January 23 when I put the book together. So he was asking for, this is very sort of a detailed kind of thing here. He was asking for things that he would have sitting on his desk. And he would have the object sitting on his desk. Here's a sample. And he would say, okay, Gail, we'll begin the remote viewing now. There's an object in front of me, and he would guide me with his special words and say, can you describe what it is that you see? So in this one, after I would describe what I would see, he would then hold the object up. So in this one, I had said, it has a metal feeling. It's yellow and bright. It's like a crystal energy. It reminds me of a radiant heart shape. And all of the sides are the same. And he gives me the object and shows it and holds it up to me. And this is the object. It's a gold icosahedron. So he sends me the object often after I remote view it. So I keep these little collections here. And we did these formal pages that show the drawings and that shows the writings. And then he would rate it on the bottom. So on the bottom, he says, I thought your description was excellent, even the healing elements. I'm attaching our 7-point scale, so he shows me how. Thanks for your thoughtful and excellent help in looking at my new target. So it was rated a 6, and we have the name, the type, the whatever. So we did all 13 of these, and so each one is here listed with the dates and the time and how it was rated. And then they go into much more technical things that I can't speak about, like these graphs that show something that happened during it. And uh, they wanted to know, because they are studying things about sidereal time and whether you're more psychic during these sidereal times. So it was sent off to a man named James Spottiswoode, who's a statistics person, and he checked to see. And I think it was actually my stronger ones were during the new moon, I think. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it didn't, I don't think it affected the sidereal time, that what they were looking for necessarily on that. So I did a dozen of these, and they're all interesting objects that he has on his desk, and they can range from a candelabra to a spoon or something, and or like this, what was an apple cutter. So they're not like some crazy unusual object. The icosahedron was a test. He wanted to see whether other people would be able to remote view such an object. So often he gives me an object before he does it with a group of people to see if it's easily remote viewable or if it's a harder task to remote view. So we did things. We did a Raggedy Ann doll and a spinning top and a ukulele, and and some of them, I in the ukulele one here, you can see here's the ukulele, and then here's the drawing. Oops, I can't. There we are. So you can see there's a drawing down here with a handle and a hand. I'm a very terrible. I can't draw well. There's sort of stick figures, but in any event, it shows you how my drawings are very simplistic drawings of the remote viewing things, where people that are famous professional remote viewers, like what's his name? Oh God. Well, we know, of course, Ingo Swann, but I'm talking about our friend that's still alive and doing all the remote viewing, that did the government work with Russell back in the old day. Joe McMoneagle. These people draw detailed, incredible drawings, and they're talented artistically to be able to do this. I have none of that, and I'm not going to all of a sudden become an artist overnight. So I have to usually write words to describe what that drawing is. So I'll maybe put a word in to let them know. So the last chapter of my book is going to be this collection of Russell and I's work together that we had done over that last little period. I don't know if its listeners are familiar with Russell Targ, but I think it's on YouTube. You can watch The Third Eye Spies. Have you watched that film?
No.
Highly recommend it. It's a documentary of the work of the beginnings of remote viewing and the different people, the CIA, Ingo Swann, all the different people that were involved in the program, the military. It's the tell-all about the whole history of remote viewing at Stanford Research. And I was fortunate to be in the original full-length movie until the CIA gave a whole lot of information, a retired CIA man, and they had to cut me out because I was really present-day remote viewer, and it was really a documentary of the past. But I was put into the extras, so and it's also on a YouTube, so there's a 7-minute remote viewing of Russell and I doing what's called, there are different types of remote viewings. There's remote viewings where you're given coordinates. That's the common one I think the military was using. There's remote viewings where you're looking into the future. That was the ones that I started doing, where you're told it's 1:00 right now, and at 3:00, a computer is going to show you a picture of some place in the world that's a National Geographic photograph, and we'd like you to describe that at 1 o'clock, and at 3 o'clock we'll show you the drawing. So I found that fascinating, that I was able to see what was going to happen like that and draw it, and then watch it come up on a screen 2 hours later when it hadn't even been picked when I was making the drawing. So I was learning through all these experiments with them that time is not like we understand time. And there is no time. I mean, there's no time in that space. So you can see the past, the present, or the future, because there's no time. There's no linear time there. I don't know how to explain it. You have to experience it. But when you're looking and seeing something that was not shown to you yet, and then it's shown to you and it's what you saw, you have to question, what is time now?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I agree completely. I guess how they would define it as remote viewing within Taoism, we call it soul projection, or, pretty much in turn, that's what it is. How we train ourselves in these types of sensory, what I define as sensory perception, is you create an architecture, which is where the principles and the trainings of Nigong, which is the internal alchemy practices. Now, your energetic capabilities are from previous lives that are giving you the ability to access it at will so easily. And I attribute my entry into this sort of state of consciousness to be very similar. From the beginning, over 30 years ago, when I started this journey, I accept everything at face value. I've got nothing more to it. And part of the way you can access this type of like instant information is being just the present moment without the distraction of whatever you perceive as you. That's the only way you can get there. For years of training in this stuff, the present moment is it. That's all you got. And when you access that and it's void of your personality, which I call your personality, this is how you acquire this information. But for me, when I teach people this stuff, the first thing you need to understand is never about you. And so all that sort of understanding and that realization, all of a sudden information just starts free flowing. Like for me, I had like literally woke up one day and I had 1,000 icons on the screen in front of me with my eyes open. And it was an overwhelming moment of realization where everywhere I looked, it had information. It had instant information. No matter what the aura was, the mental, emotional, physical state of somebody, it's just there. It's just present. And as you mentioned, you can't explain it unless you've experienced it. And I believe that you and I have a very similar understanding of these things, because you have to really, it's a palpability. There's a palpable sense that you feel. Like people talk about sixth sense. There's a frequency consciousness that you drop into and you feel it through your whole being. Does this make sense?
Not only does it make sense, a good example would be, for me, and maybe for other listeners that are listening to this, when I was pregnant with my first daughter and I was traveling around Europe, and it was 1976, anytime we would, first of all, any listeners out there, when you're pregnant, your psychic level is, your awareness and everything is way open, and that's usually when I speak to people who don't have an understanding about this, the first situations I describe is a mother and a child, because there you have an immediate invisible connection that knows and feels things that can't be explained. So when we would go into these places that were, old castles and, very ancient ruins, I would get so emotionally overwhelmed with crying and feeling the energy of tortures and pains and things that went on in the dungeons and things that happened to the people that lived in these places. You can't stop the information from coming at you. It's just like this. And it affected me. It has affected me that way all my life, to where there are places where I've been, like when I was in deep in Mongolia, and I was going to the birthplace of Genghis Khan, and also to the only, there were only two monasteries left in all of Mongolia. Everything was destroyed by the communist rule, and only one temple was left in Ulaanbaatar, the capital of Mongolia, and it's quite a powerful temple I've been through. And this other place called Erden Zoo, which they killed all the monks, thousands and thousands of monks were killed, but the place was left there not to be a monastery, but left there for, I can't remember what they used it for, but when Mongolia got returned back to its people, Erden Zoo got turned back into being a monastery and is thriving today with, many, many monks. And it's filled with artifacts that are very, very ancient, that had been buried and hidden so that they could be kept, Buddhist tankas and very beautiful things. Well, when I went there, I don't think I was sitting in the room with the monks that were chanting, and it's a tiny little room, not like some big, ballroom kind of thing. I'm talking a small building. I get affected, and all of a sudden I'm out of body, and I'm seeing the slaughtering, and I'm seeing the stuff that's going on, and I don't speak Mongolian, so it's difficult. I don't have any translators with me. So they're looking at me, and I'm, vibrating like this, and I'm shaking, and I can't walk. And I see the things that are going to happen to me in the temple before they happen. And they're unusual things. It's just that while I sat there, I saw that the master of the temple was going to take this thing. I think it's called a vajra. I'm very bad with the names of everything, but it's a Buddhist tool that has two little balls at the end, and a little thing in the middle, and it's used in Buddhist. I don't know if it's prayer or exactly what, but in it, I saw that the monk took it and he puts it in front and puts it on my third eye. And when my Mongolian friends came to take me out of the chanting, because I asked them to leave me there for an hour by myself so I could experience it, when they came to take me out, there's a special way you leave the temple and you say your gratefulness or gratitude, and you leave a little donation to the temple. So my friends helped me to do this, and when they brought me in front of the monks, as we were to say thank you, the master did exactly what I'd seen, which was take that special little tool thing and put it right inside on my third eye. When they took me out of there, that was it. There was not, Gail was gone. I mean, I had to be laid down on the ground, and what appears to be looking like I'm having convulsions or something, which is not what's happening at all. My body's going through tremendous amounts of electricity and energy shooting through it. And my eyes are closed, but I'm having what it took me years to find out, because I've had these sporadically through my life since my 20s. My last one was about 8 years ago, I think. They're called Kundalini experiences. And it's where everything lined up in my body, and it's like gold light is shooting from the base of my spine all the way out the top of my head. And even though my eyes are closed and I look like, it's not a, you don't look too good when it's happening to other people, that's not what's going on inside. Inside, I'm seeing golden temples and places, and I'm feeling a connection of a joy or love that's beyond a human loving feeling. It's beyond the feeling you have for your children. It's beyond the love that, it's like a love bigger than, I don't even know how to call the word for that, but it's a very intense, powerful, glowing love. And I feel like maybe you're connecting into source, or I don't know. I'm not one of these that reads all these books and knows all this intellectual stuff. I just do my life experience things and try to learn from them as they kind of teach me. I always thought I was lesser than other people because I don't go and have all the words and the intellectual things about what the true Buddhism is or this or that. I just, as Dean says, I don't have any filters. And that's why all these things come to me, because I don't have a whole lot of, I have no religion. My father raised us atheists, but we come from a Jewish background. And I think that his never saying, when I would say, "Oh, I had this dream," him never saying, "Oh, that's not true," him always being supportive, I think is what's kept me like sort of in that open kind of space. So I didn't have to get through a lot of stuff to be in that place.
Yeah, Gail, I don't know. I'm high as a kite right now. Because I mean, your story is absolutely phenomenal, and in kind of parallels the sort of insight that I've experienced over my own
Oh,
journey. And
wonderful.
so it's kind of crazy because you have an unassuming sort of like realization of all these things, because I just accepted it at face value. Like one of the very first situations I had over 30 years ago was with distant healing.
Mhm.
And I had just started channeling, and I channeled Latsu, my teacher, instantaneously blew the roof off a whole room. The idea of, and when you mention the whole convulsion part, I used to break chairs all the time, nonstop, just break them, because there's so much juice running through your physical body that it's like, as you would refer to it, as a kundalini. Now that kundalini is something that I can shift into at will, and it's
Wow.
sort of like something that you just train like anything. It's like anything. Here's the thing: the audience needs to understand. It doesn't mean that much to Gail to shift into it. She's experiencing it as she experiences it. It's not like, oh, I really want to become the master of this particular practice. She doesn't care. And one of the elements of how powerful this information is because she's not invested in the Hollywood movie version of I am the guru drinking the yak milk and smoking a pipe at the top of Tibetan mountain in a lotus position, lighting incense. This is why there's so much access. And
I also think this is why on my second trip to Mongolia, I've spoken at two conferences in Mongolia, and I have a wonderful connection with the Mongolian people. And I've been honored by them in ways that no, I've not been honored by any particular Native American peoples or people necessarily of cultures here in our country. But when I went to Mongolia, they saw me as somebody they felt should be turned and initiated into a shaman. And I ended up having Zagda is a very, very, very well known shaman in all of Mongolia. And she came to my house. And I don't know if it was her first or second time coming to the United States ever, but we had no translator. And it's where I have learned that telepathy has nothing to do with the understanding of words. Because how could I know what she wanted and wanted me to do when she doesn't speak a word of English and I know two words in Mongolia, thank you and hello, and that's as far as I can get. And so what I learned in telepathy, where before all my telepathic experiences with people was knowing what was they were thinking in their mind, or what they were going to say, or what somebody that was going to die, or this kind of stuff. But when I started doing all this communication with no English, I still it's an experiment that scientists need money for these things. But it seems to me some scientist somewhere, if they could get the funding, should find out what goes on when you're telepathically communicating with another person and there is no translator and you're completely understanding each other. Now that's a communication. Where's it happening?
I mean, here's something that you can validate for the audience. Now, this is something that when I switch someone's energetic architecture on, it's quite palpable. Like, the understanding that the human brain is not hardwired to experience things that would normally be sympathetically innervated throughout the rest of the body. So you've seen the horror movies where they give someone a lobotomy and they stick the straw in there and they can't feel anything. It's like nothing. This is not what takes place with Gail and I. There's a pulpability that it's almost like I would describe it as this bubbling effect that takes place in my forehead that will be like a bubble effect. There's so much energy pulpating in my actual what we call upper dantian, and it just percolates, and it's so tangible, it's so palpable. And this is what happens when you attune yourself. Like when she's speaking on the stuff that she's experiencing now, I'm experiencing it getting high as a kite because that's happening throughout my physical attunement. Now, someone of your experience, you can validate what I'm saying because you don't know unless you experience it yourself. And please share with that.
And listeners should know the first step is to be open to anything, not to be judgmental, or and be open to just let the things happen as they will. I have to say it's a joy to speak to you and know that I'm speaking with someone who understands truly what I'm talking about.
Oh, my friend, look, I've been doing this over 30 years, but I attest my realization from past lives, bringing it to the forefront, and I literally took it at face value. When I entered this spiritual space, and then I went on the journey as a priest, I was coming from physicality. I came from bodybuilding and powerlifting, and I was like, I had an intuitive sense there was something greater. And so the very first experience that I ever had was me in a youth center being exposed to meditation, because I had no idea what it was. I'd pick up objects, crush them, throw them. That was my view of reality, right? And so I was sat down in this rec room. This Grand Master was doing a freebie, I guess, justifying their nonprofit organization. Who knows? There was a bunch of misfits like myself sitting there going, I want to know what meditation is, because I had no idea. Meditation to me was like some, Buddhist monk per se, or a yogi, or some type of like yoga instructor, singing a hum in the background. I had no idea. So I went in with the intrigue to want to discover what that is. And so I tried to sit down. I was over a 300-pound bodybuilder. I tried to sit in the lotus position like some really cringeworthy ape, just sort of hunching over. And this woman is like, now, you need to just relax. And I'm like, in the background, I've got cars driving by, dogs barking, people screaming. It was in a ghetto. It was a youth center. It's nowhere special. It was like there was so much noise going on. I thought, there's no way. What are we talking about? I heard somewhere that meditation is stilling something. I have no idea. So I sat down and I'm like, this is a joke. My back is killing me. There's no way I'm gonna access this enlightenment per se. And all I can hear is the dogs barking, things going on, ambulances, all this kind of stuff. Forget it. It's not going to happen. And she goes, now sit down. Okay, you're in the lotus position. I'm in a lot of pain. And she's like, now take a moment. Let the sound fall away. And literally that second, I went, what the? It all disappeared. And I was like, there was nothing. And I can't even hear her. I'm just sitting there in complete silence. And I was like, holy adjective. You cannot believe that I was addicted. It was like taking the first toke. That's it for me. That's all I needed, was that sensory perception, the ability to, because I didn't expect anything. You and I are so much cut from the same cloth. It's not funny, because I didn't expect a single thing. I was like, what am I going to do? It's like, what I'm going to do is follow their instruction. That's it. Follow their instruction. And I assume they know what they're talking about. So I'm going to experience whatever they say they're going to experience.
Well, I have to tell your listeners, I have a podcast called A Small Medium at Large, and I'm going to have, do you say your name San? Is that
San Qing? San Qing.
San Qing is going to come on my show so that I can question him also, because I have to have you on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because this stuff is, you see, people like yourself and myself live it, we breathe it, it's our reality. And we just embrace it from a minute, second by second, minute by minute basis. And even though I have the persona as a priest, that was a path that was handed to me from when I channeled my first teacher, Latsu, and he still guides me to this day in this very moment, second by second. He's actually sitting in the room right now at the table, as vivid as I can see you, I can see him. Now, that transmission, you understand exactly what I'm talking about, because when you get this information, it can either, there's two ways that can happen. You can see it in your third eye, or you can literally see it with your eyes open. It's just sitting right in front of you, and you're aware of all things. And that's the part that freaks people out, because when I had that sensory perception overload, it was like everything came about, and like my torus field was literally transmitted, and I could see the color of it, like with my eyes open, and it was a bubble around my body, and I would walk down the street bumping into other people's torus fields. And it was so crazy, the access of information. Now, I would tell you, because you're in your own admission, you say you still sort of, it's overwhelming sometimes. I just sort of mastered giving what information I want. Just give me what I need, instead of like going, I'm having a psychotic episode of too much. I'm like, okay, this person, I'm going to focus on this person. Like you and I talking right now, we're not sampling each other's energy. We're not getting into that. But if it took a second, it would take a second, and either one of us could get deep into a state of understanding of information. But it's like, let's move in that gear. Guess what? We have personalities. We like to laugh. We like to have fun. We like to enjoy our lives. This is the reality. But so many people want to squeeze themselves into a mold where they are, hey, I am the guru, I am the healer, I am the this.
I've been beating myself up for years because I couldn't squeeze myself into any particular thing. And I'm only now in my later years in life here, finally just accepting myself for who I am, and that's okay.
100%.
I want to speak a little bit about the meditation for your listeners. I was exposed to meditation as a young girl because we had a Hindu monk that lived in our vegan commune. And so I saw amazing meditation that he would protest the building of nuclear power plants, and he'd be in lotus position with his robes and his beads, and we'd see newspaper pictures of him being taken away on a stretcher, never flinching or moving once. So when I was a kid and he was living with us, and I was 7 by then, I used to try to do things to him, and I'd pinch him or poke him or do, and so I'd say, how could somebody be, and he'd be as still as can be. And so I really got to be exposed to what real meditation was back then, but I never took it up myself until later when it was, part of the self-help and things people were doing. But I didn't get the true amazing power of it until, I did it. I was meditating, kind of regularly here and there, up and down in my life, just like I do anything, whether it's exercise or meditation or whatever. But in my 30s, I think when I was 33, I was diagnosed with a cancer. And they said I only had 2 to 5 years to live, and that the cancer was going to spread everywhere in my body. And so, having been raised unconventionally with not a trusting of the medical system and doctors, I decided I'd go for 10 months on my own and try to heal myself without having any medical interference in the cancer. So one of the most powerful things I did, which I didn't go to do, I had rented a room in a Vipassana retreat center dojo place in Maui in Hawaii, and my friend lived just a few miles away, and I was staying with him, and this room became available, and I said, oh, could I just rent that because I'm trying to heal my cancer? And they said sure. And so when I moved into the room, I heard that there was going to be this special meditation with Joseph Goldstein and Sharon Salzberg, and these are very well-known, famous Vipassana meditation teachers who've taught thousands and thousands of students. And some guy comes up to me and he says, I heard you're dealing with cancer. And he said, it's only 30 people. It's been sold out for a long time, but I want to give you my ticket. So, you can pay me, but I would rather you take this. You need to go to this more than I do. So I wasn't going to go to it. I wasn't signing up for 9 days of silent meditation, 12 hours a day. I was happy to do a little meditation here and there. but it was laid out before me, and I said yes, because saying yes is half the thing. And I found it to be the most powerful thing to this date, even though I've never done it again. I have done all day meditations in, it's Northern California here. There's a lot of different centers where you can go and meditate all day, and found those to be powerful, but never imagined I could do it for 9 days, not speaking to anybody. And as you can tell, I'm a talkative person, a New Yorker. I mean, what are you going to say here, right? When
Be
I
very careful. We could keep talking, and before you know it, 2 days have disappeared now.
we're ready at an hour. So I started the meditation, and it was more than 12 hours a day, but I signed up for just 12 hours. And it was sitting meditation, walking meditation, sitting meditation, walking meditation. And you did 45 minutes of each one. And then there was breaks for your breakfast, your lunch, and your dinner, and like a bathroom break or something. You were not to speak to any of the people in the place. You were not to speak to any of the workers. The only time you spoke was when Joseph Goldstein, the teacher, every other day, he would check in with you to see if you're doing okay. There were certain rules you were supposed to follow. And of course, I've always been a rule breaker, still am, and will still always be. And you're not supposed to write down your dreams. But I wrote down all my dreams. I mean, I gave up pot smoking. I gave up sugar. I gave up all the things they asked you to do. But when it came down to not writing what was happening in my dreams, I couldn't do that. Because for any of you people out there who smoke pot, and it's one of the main reasons that all our veterans smoke pot, is because it does take away some of your dreams. If you smoke a lot, you may not have as many dreams or remember them. It's not that you're not dreaming, you are, but you're not getting as disturbed. Like we have a Vietnam veteran friend, and if he doesn't smoke, his dreams will start coming back, and all of a sudden he's in the Mekong Delta or wherever. And this is powerful stuff that's affected them for this many years later in their lives. So whatever relief they can get is a wonderful thing. So I was willing to give all these things up. And when I gave up the sugar, because I unfortunately like sugar, I would go in every morning before, because I was sleeping in the dojo where all the teachers were sleeping, because I'd rented that room. In the morning, I'd see they're all stocking up on sugar, and then they're going to go meditate. So I'm looking at all the people they're teaching about, and how everybody had to give everything up, but the teachers didn't give this up.
Well, isn't it funny? Because really, when you get down to the brass tacks, it's a jumping point to realization. And really, when you get there, Gail, I know Gail does it the way I do it. It's like everything falls away. Her ability to focus on something is like this. It's like, and it's not a try, it's not a maybe. It's just like nothing else is present, just this moment right here. And that's second to none, my friend. Like,
well, I didn't think I could do this, to be quiet. Like
you could do it to a degree that I don't even know anyone else that can do it outside of myself. That can do it to that degree, the way you do it. It's just like instant. It's like everything for me. Everything falls away. It's just a black drop of nothing, and the object, the item, whatever it is the only thing that's in front of me.
Well, for any listeners out there, if they've never meditated, I highly suggest giving it a stab or a try or whatever. But I also want to say that I don't think that you have, for me anyway, in my opinion, I don't think you have to necessarily go to a Vipassana retreat place. You don't have to go sit cross-legged, which I can't do anymore now, which I could do then. And I see people in chairs and say, why can't they sit cross-legged? Well, now I'm their age and I know why they can't. But I do meditation when I'm doing a repetitive job out I live in an orchard in 15 acres. So if I'm picking mulberries for 3 hours, I go into like a meditative space. And just because I'm not sitting cross-legged does not mean I'm not in a meditative thing. So I just want to say, I think that that's accessible for you, whether you're you're in a subway, or you're, in a field or somewhere else. I don't think you necessarily have to have all the bells and whistles of quietness around you to make yourself have a meditation. I think it's something to do with stilling and being in the moment.
Well, that's that mastery. That's that accessibility of the present moment. And you fell into it because you realize that that's just what it is. It's same as me. It's just the moment right now. And you go, hey, you're just. I always remind people it's like a childlike state. Be childlike in your nature. Oh yeah. So I can grab my kids and go, guess what? Superman, Chris Kringle, and Bonnie are coming over tomorrow for dinner. They're like, oh, I can't wait. That's all you got to do. And truly, and that pulpability. Now, would you say collectively over time? I mean, this is just something that's been present with me, and I teach people this. It becomes more and more concentrated, and easier to access that because it's condensed. And so the pulpability of it now, whether you have a specific practice of how you do that, or you just acquired that sensory perception, it becomes so dense that you just put your intention to anything, and it becomes realized that way.
Well, for me, you know how you were talking about how you visually see your teacher right now who's sitting there in the room with you. I asked to be able to see visually once, and I got my answer, and I did get to see visually when my dog was dying in my lap. I saw him leave his body and dance all around me and be a youthful, happy young dog. And I kept thanking him for showing me the possibility. Because when everybody kept saying, oh, I see these images, I was like, I don't see anything. What are they seeing? I want to see something. And my dog showed me what it was like to see. But that isn't my strength. My strength is auditory. I hear things. I hear information. And what it takes is something I want to share with your audience is we all have this small inner intuitive voice inside ourselves. And the more we listen to it and honor it and accept it and respect it, the more louder it becomes and more frequent. And when I tell them things like when I show somebody the two apps that you can work on to train yourself if you want to become a better remote viewer, the ESP app or the Stargate ESP trainer, is I say, whatever fleets by so fast that you can't really catch it, that's the answer. That's the one. And this, sometimes using this trainer, it was a way to teach you that, like for me, often I would guess what the answer would be, but it would really be my second thought, not the one.
I was just going to say that, my friend, like when you're using that particular app or information in of itself, it's instantaneous. It's not something you're going to work up to because then your mind wants to twist it. But quite frankly, what I will say is once you get it, you cannot manipulate it.
Mm-hmm.
It's in your mind. Like, it's like, hang on, you want to test out whether the information is correct or not. Once you get an answer, attempt to change the answer. Attempt to change the material, and you'll be perplexed in your mind that you cannot do it. It's like, hang on a second. Oh, no, I got this feeling it's a yes. And just the simplicity of duality, let's just say yes or no is a fundamental basic entry level. When you get the right answer, you cannot change the answer in your mind. And people go, whoa, how is that possible? You understand
I
what
have
I'm
an
saying?
example about that I want to share. When I learned that, what you're saying, I was asked, people ask me to do strange things here and there. So I was asked a few times, and I've only done a few of these, and I don't desire to do them because I find them very
just for the audience out there, there's no wish list, all right? So I don't want anyone to start rolling up on Gail's doorstep or on the internet.
Persons, working on missing persons cases. So I've only done two or three, I think two missing persons cases. And it's too emotional for me. I get too invested in, and when I feel like the fear, or if it's been a murder, or it's just too much for me. I just don't, I'd rather do other kinds of things, but the missing persons. But someone asked me to do this that was not a scientist or anything. He was a therapist in Berkeley whose patient was missing their mother. Their mother had been missing for 8 days. And she had left Berkeley to move to Colorado to live with a boyfriend. and this young man had went to visit her and came back to Berkeley, and then he called her to wish her a Happy New Year or something, or Merry Christmas, and there was no answer, and that was very unusual. So he kept calling, and there was no response. Nobody knew where she was. The police, they finally called the police, and I didn't even know that I was capable of doing this sort of thing as I tell you this. And they asked me, do I know if where the mother is? So I'm like, I don't even know who this guy is. I don't even know what he looks like. All I have is some man on the phone at a psychiatrist's office saying my mom's missing. And so immediately in my mind's movie theater here, which is different than seeing the visuals out there.
So
I
do I.
Here and up here I see movies, but in
Hmm.
the actual out there, I saw that it is possible, and I do believe people doing that because I saw my dog, so I know it's true. But in this, immediately popped in my mind. I saw his mother, and she was slumped over a steering wheel in a car on the side of the road with big boulders all around where her car was. But I wasn't going to say, how do I know? Maybe I'm just getting this picture. I don't know if this is this guy's mother. I'm going to say, oh, yeah, your mother's in a car on the side of the road. Well, who am I? You know what I mean? So I say to him, well, just tell me, how do you feel? Because you are the more connected to her than any other being. You're her son. What do you think is going on? He said, I don't think she's with us anymore. And I said, well, you should follow how you feel. And that's all I encouraged him to do. And I said, let me speak to the psychiatrist. So the psychiatrist gets on the phone, and I have the feeling like you were just talking about, where the energy's going like this. And I'm
Hmm.
going like this, and I'm going, I don't know what to say or do. I said, but I saw the woman, and she's slumped over the steering wheel. She's dead, and she's in her car. And I don't want to say anything because I don't know if this is true. I don't know where this information is coming from. So he says, it's okay, Gail. You did everything right. It's fine. Thank you very much. And blah, blah. So I figure that's the end. But no, 3 hours later, I get a call from him again. He said, it doesn't have to do with what you told me, but the Colorado police just found her. And it was as you described. And when I told the police, they had some questions for you. So they found her on the side of the road with her head slumped over the steering wheel, dead, in a spot where there were big boulders around. So now it's the police department asking, could you ask Gail? And I'm thinking, I'm not a missing persons person. And they call back. The question was, do you think there's foul play? Because the police think there might be foul play. They went to her home, and everything was left there. Her purse was there. Everything's there. They don't understand. Could this be foul play? And I had the feeling like you're talking about, which I'd never had so strongly. Otherwise I'd say, well, could be, maybe, or, I'd like to be reasonable. This was not like that. This was like, no, there was no foul play. I said I felt no violence. It didn't give me the feeling like the murder one I did. It didn't give me scariness. It didn't give me any of these gut feelings, just a sadness. And part of the story I forgot to tell you is the first question I asked the son is, does your mother have cancer? And he says, no, she's a very healthy, fit woman. She's a hiker. She's a backpacker. She's in great shape. I said, okay. Well, the police get my information that no, there is no foul play. This had nothing to do, blah, blah. And they're looking around in the home, and they find a letter. And she's written a letter to the family saying, while she was in Berkeley here, she was diagnosed with a completely untreatable, uncurable cancer that's giving her 6 or 7 months to live, and it'll be very painful death. And she did not want to experience that, or for her family and children to have to watch her die so painfully. So she took her life in the car with carbon monoxide poisoning and asphyxiated herself. And that was the end of the story. For me, it was a teaching. And for me, it was saying, wow, I didn't know I could do this even with such accuracy. But it also gave me that feeling that I'd never been so sure in my conviction that there was no one else involved in this, that I just knew it to the core of my being. Normally I say, well, this could happen, or that, it was a very intense feeling.
Yeah.
And it's just to share that, that's how things can happen this way.
Well, I mean, it's an attunement. When you mentioned her, I had tuned into it, and if you noticed, before you gave me the answer, I was going, no, it wasn't her. She did it wasn't. She wasn't murdered. It wasn't foul play, and I was doing this the whole time because I tapped into the information. This is how quickly you can ascertain it, and then the charge that you and I experience through our physical bodies as we're attuning ourselves even more to it, which I see with my eyes open, is the aura or your auric field charging. And so it's like, this is just energy that I see. But I want to bring you back to when you said, well, I hear it, but you also see images. It's not that you don't see images. So I want everyone to understand that she's still seeing images, but she's getting a what she considers in her mind speaking it. But
No,
it's
it's two things. It's voices. I'm hearing something,
right,
but I have like in some of these, it's like a movie plays out inside my mind.
right.
And I consider up here in my third eye, it's like a screen inside. So that is where I'm visually seeing, but I'm auditorily hearing the information. What I'm speaking about is people who say, oh, I can see them standing a deceased person. I can see them standing right here in front of me.
Right.
That
No.
I had never experienced. So
Yes.
I believe it could be real, but because they're saying they're doing it, but
Well, that's
I
what I
never had it
experienced.
happen.
That's what I experienced all day long.
Yeah, so
And,
I
you know,
think that is
it's all
incredible.
palpable. It's kind of like I can fixate on the spirit and then walk through his aura and experience the auric field. It's just like when I said you hear it in your mind, you're hearing it, but it's a monologue. It's not a
Right,
dialogue,
right.
right? So you're visualizing. You see, when I do past life readings, this is what happens to people. I get them to lay down, close their eyes, and I'll go through the last 9 lives they have, and they experience it as a movie running in their mind. And this is the power of, and I've only ever heard one other person explain it that way, is you. Because people just conceptualize this stuff. There's a lot of Hollywood fantasy stuff, and they want it so badly that they lose it. They want it so badly that they'll never obtain it because there's so many constructs and variables that are going to distance themselves between the actual realization of it and it just being a thought or a process is. And we go back to understanding how we get information. It's instantaneous. It's not like we're going to fire it up. And what most people tend to do is I always get students to start with the basics. Look at anything. Doesn't matter what it is. And now write down what you are perceiving in your mind. Whatever comes to you, it doesn't matter what it is. It's all a picture of information that you're acquiring from the place, person, or thing instantly. And the biggest thing is to dismiss it, because that's where the supercharge component, where I like to teach people that internal alchemy practice. Then you do the validation, like the one you're experiencing, the one that I experienced, is this complete, all-encompassing validation. And it's like, you had the Kundalini experience. When I turned on these clairsenses, I had equivalent to what people call a dark night of the soul.
Mhm.
So I felt every feeling, every thought, every emotion all at once for about 5 or 6 days. And I honestly wanted to end the pain and suffering. Like I attempted to go, I'll go and see a movie, it'll make me feel better. The second someone came on the screen, just like the charge we're experiencing now, this oscillating charge, that is the connection that we have. Now, I watched a woman, and this is like, okay, this naked woman in a movie. I started vomiting on the person in front of me. There was a complete physiological, mental, emotional, purging of all things at once for me to ascend to this higher consciousness. It was like a tipping point that just became realized. And then, I've always explained to people you can have up to 9 dark nights of the soul in your lifetime. And that's only due to my teaching. Now, is there 1,000 ways up the mountain? 1,000%. But if you're in front of me and I'm giving you insight to your own revelation or realization or consciousness, I'm going to give you the fundamentals that have been practiced by millions of Taoists before us, and they work. They're not conceptual. They're actual palpable abilities that you acquire. and I live it all day long. And it's almost like we're besties. All of a sudden we're attuned, because the things that we experience are conceptual to probably 99% of people until otherwise notified on this type of stuff. And unless you experience it, it's nothing more than that. And people are in awe. They're like, "Oh my goodness, tell me more. It's crazy." You don't, I mean, you could literally put a gun to Gail's head with a blank check. You couldn't make this stuff up.
Mhm.
It just is.
Speaking of the dark nights of the soul, because I just had one myself recently, uh, when you go through the dark nights of the soul, you want to be out of it so badly. But when you go through it, just like they say, when you go through it, if it doesn't kill you, it will make you stronger. That's how the dark nights of the soul have felt for me. That even though it's a horrifying sort of experience when you're in the midst of it, it's where the growth, there's so much growth that happens when you've gone through those particular times in life. So we look upon it as, oh, that was the Sahara. What there was so much teaching that came from that. If we don't judge it as one is black and dark and one is light and bright, and we look at them all as it's all part of the same energetic field, they're just like yin and yang, they're just opposing things, and we let it go through us and we experience along with it. And believe me, in some of those few times of dark nights of the soul through our lifetime, which I see both you and I have had, there were times that you don't want to live, that you've had enough.
No, I honestly was like, just let it be over.
Exactly.
This last one that you had was like, someone would equate it to the highest example of manic depressive situation where there's no ending. I just need, and then under that layer of depression, there was this anxiety that was just percolating. Every second was just heightened. It's like you had 55 cups of coffee at will.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this is the tapping in that we want to share with the audience. It's like, all I'm doing is tapping into her experience and experiencing it. And then she's like, yes, oh my goodness, I finally found someone that completely resonates with me and can experience what I'm experiencing. High five to that.
This is why on my podcast, I tell people, if even just one person got something out of this show, then my show has done a good service, because that's all that I'm hoping for it to do, which is share stories, because stories can heal. And the more that we share our stories, which in the ancient times was the form of keeping the memories of things alive. I mean, stories was the way teaching was done. Stories were very important when they had no written down papers and things like this in the old days. So when we share our stories, some light bulb goes on somewhere in some other person, and all we're doing is sharing our truth of what's true for us. And I can't be any more open and honest than that. That's it. You're seeing me with no filters. I have my clothes on, but that's it,
Well, I honestly believe you and I are literally walking around our lives experiencing the emperor's new clothes, quite frankly.
You said you were a Taurus. Is that what you said?
Oh, no. I'm actually Capricorn.
Oh, Capricorn. I thought you said something about being in a Taurus.
Well, the Taurus field, yes.
Oh.
So you tap into the information. So within the system that I show someone how to do psychic reading, you just instantly start reading the energy centers, and you get the emotion or virtue. You want the virtue over the emotion, but there's always excess or deficiency, right? And you just look at the main 5 vital organs, and then you run through the energy centers, which someone would call a chakra, and it gives you all that information. And then you just go, boom. I like to call them drive-by psychic readings. So I'll just meet someone and all of a sudden give them their mental, emotional, and physical state, and they're like, I wish I never asked you. Because I'll be like, do you want a reading? And they're like, sure, Mr. Magic Man, give me a reading, why don't you? And they, when it starts to get down, because I'm not invested, because Gail and I are not invested, so that's where you really get the information. So I'm not invested in it. I just read what's on the screen. And so then I'm studying to read from the bottom up, and I get to the sexual energy, and they're like, whoa, 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 where did this come from? Well, you just said for me to give you a reading, but hang on, you don't need to talk about this, that, and something else, and what's not going on. And it starts with a color, and then the actual information comes through after the excess or deficient color of that particular energy center. And so,
Well, you just picked on one of my favorite topics, sexual energy. So I want to mention something about sexual energy, but before I go to the sexual energy, I just want your listeners to know I just got an email from some guy named San saying we'd like to have you on our show. I didn't know who he was. I didn't read up on him. I didn't watch the previous show. I didn't know what he even looked like. I thought you were going to be Asian with that name. So right here in this moment, as you watch this YouTube or listen to this on Spotify or whatever social media channel you're listening to, these two people, Gail and Son, have just met here in this moment for the first time. But I can tell you, it feels like we have been talking to each other for years. And I don't feel like I'm just meeting you there's no strangeness or uncommonness or feeling like, God, this guy's asking me personal questions or what should I say? Or there's nothing like that here. I hope the audience is grasping that it feels like we've been friends forever and we're just meeting at this moment, at this day, at this time.
And it's translated into an understanding. You know me, I know you on a deeper level.
Yes. And I don't know anything. I don't know that you teach. I didn't know you knew anything about. I figured, oh, well, he's interested in remote viewing. Maybe he's a remote viewer. I don't know anything about. So I'm looking forward to finding more details about you when I interview you then.
Yes, I will love to share.
That you teach, you're doing all these amazing things. I just want to touch on sexual energy, which nobody ever wants to talk about.
Yeah. Well, Taoists have a sexual practice, a sexual magic. So absolutely. Okay, so I want to hear this because
I got the right guy.
Yeah, you do have the right guy.
Okay. So I've tried to talk about this to some of my scientist friends, but nobody's ever said anything. And the only person who ever offered me information was Ingo Swann. I don't know if you know who Ingo Swann is. I think he's considered the father of remote viewing. He is the man who he's the man who taught them at Stanford how to do remote viewing and that how it should be done and how we should be doing more interesting things. He remote viewed the, what was it recently where some years back, a planet that was discovered that it has rings around it and nobody knew it did. He had remote viewed that before the scientist telescope was able to see it. He's the most famous, powerfully known remote viewer. You should look him up, Ingo Swann.
I will check him out. I'll just add a side note, not that I'm biased, but Taoists have been aware of this internal alchemy for thousands of years.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. But, so Ingo, when I'm in his place in the Bowery in New York, and I'm telling him about sexual energy and why doesn't anyone want to discuss this in this, he passes me his book called Psychic Sexual Energy. Wrote a whole book about it. So what it is that I kept noticing after I would do remote viewings, I would be filled with, and also for anyone out there, not anyone, it's like anything in basketball or in anything that people do. It's never 100%. You don't always do a perfect remote viewing. You don't always get the target every time. If you look statistically at how many times you do it, then you can be saying, oh, she's a good remote viewer. So I'm considered a good remote viewer. Okay. After I would have those good readings or remote viewings, I would have a tremendous amount of sexual energy. And all I'd want to do is have sex after these. And I could not understand what is going on here with the remote viewing and sexual energy. It didn't even seem like they would be two things that would connect together. Because, one has to do, you're looking at a picture and a scene, but, there's nothing sexual about it. But there's something about when I am in that moment and connecting in that place where there is no time, that there's a lot of sexual energy involved in it for me. For me, I'm not saying this is for everybody. And as I'm getting older, my sexual energy is even more and more heightened, which I thought was going to supposed to be the other way, where that as you got older, you lost your, because you physically have lost, certain hormones and things that promote the sexual
That's not
energy.
even, that doesn't even come on
It
the table.
doesn't
It's not
touch
even
on
relevant.
this. It doesn't. And when I've looked at pornography, I haven't seen anybody have those kind of orgasms. So I'm like wondering, who can I talk to that when I tell them the kind of orgasms I have, that I don't even want to tell anyone, because then you kind of spoil the, I don't want to ruin my special thing that's going on.
Well, it's like never ending. Now, understand that when you hit these type of degrees of elated states of bliss, however you want to define it, an expansion. I wouldn't even put a title on what you experience, because it's a vibrational, like your whole body just like starts percolating,
It's a
and it just
frequency,
resonates from the inside out.
and it's a frequency beyond actual sexual. It's past sexual orgasm.
Oh yeah.
It's the
That's
thing
just a
that comes
tipping
there.
point.
Yeah. But I
That's
don't know how to share that.
You just did.
But
You just did, because I mean, this is what happens, and it resonates, and it's almost like literally you can have the death rattle of a final climax for most people, but this will resonate for Gail for a very long time. It doesn't dissipate like instantaneously as a concentrated point. It expands, and then you literally are enveloped in it for a long time.
and it doesn't feel like at that moment like I really have a body at that time, that the joyous place, or I don't even know what to call the place. I spoke to my friend, Dr. Stanley Krippner, who's an amazing man on dreams and psychologist, and he termed it something called glossalia or something. It's a place beyond pleasure. It's a place that's past pleasure. So,
Well, it's a tipping point. So you get this completely charged example when you're doing remote viewing. It's like you're getting a direct channel. Now, when most people do it, if they're not seasoned in it and they're not mastered in it, you'll become quite exhausted after an event like a channeling or a remote viewing session. It's not something that you're going to come out of going, "Wow, I feel amazing." No, you will feel physically tapped in
oh no,
some
I
cases.
feel the other way.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
That's
oh.
for the average. That's for the average. Now, you are accessing, for me, I do the same. I just supercharge and expand the energy. But most people will tap into their life force, and they literally feel spent by the end of it. This comes with energy healing, psychic capability, mediumship channeling. This is the general consensus of most people. When you don't understand how to realize that you saturate the physical body, and then you tap into all things. You're not tapping into your own physical constitution. And so you are naturally doing that because you're being supercharged. When the energy comes in, it's not just being transmitted through your third eye, you're experiencing it through your whole energy body, which basically just regulates everything. So it just turns it on. The reason that you're being so sexually aroused is because all your energy centers are aligned perfectly for that very moment. And you're now oscillating. And this is the perfect seed for another realization, manifestation, magic healing, because everything is aligned due to your remote viewing. It's now like it's like a recharge. It's like, holy moly, I feel incredible. I feel like I could walk through a wall. And then you add the tipping point of the actual climax, and you're on you. People have no idea. I do. I know what it's like. I experience it, but you don't know unless you have actually been there. It's like the old "When Harry Met Sally, I'll have whatever she's having." Well,
The comfort in us talking right now and me knowing you, knowing me, knowing you, knowing is very comforting. And
well, it's
that's the joy of these podcasts. I have my podcast has a life of its own. I never know who the guest is. They just appear. I don't have to look for them. They come on the show, and I have many that, I mean, my next trip when I go back to see my relatives in New York, there's a half a dozen podcasters that I've had on my show that I know I'm going to have lunch or dinner with to meet them. So the people that are coming into my office in my house, I would never, had there not been this, I would have had to go to conferences or other ways of meeting them and bringing them into your space. So this social media thing has really opened up an incredible space for me to be able to meet with like-minded and some individuals that, like people that are very heavy into UFOs or other things, listening to their stories, things I maybe wouldn't have never wanted to talk about.
Well, that ET you bring something up, Gail, that's really interesting. That whole ET. I mean, I've been channeling spirits and entities and all that stuff for 30 years now. Not more than a fire sale, in my opinion. In the last 3 months, I've seen more aliens than I could poke a stick at. Just recently. And now, whether it's a psyop of a consensus of consciousness, consensus where everyone is coming together and going, okay, the rabbit's out of the hat, admission time. I'm seeing these things, I'm experiencing these things. But when I look at people's auric fields, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. They're all over the place. And I have never seen that before in 30 years. And I've been channeling a long time. And all of a sudden, it's like fire sale time. Who's got the discount? Let's get down there and bring out all the aliens. And they're everywhere. Have you noticed this?
Well, I just had a guest, my last guest on Wednesday, Matt Hendricks, he just sent me a painting of an alien that he did because he was a healthy young man who, when he was a young boy, his mother went to a psychic and she told the mother that one of her sons was going to be in a wheelchair later in life. And the mother never went to a psychic. It was her only time. And she thought that was a crazy thing. She's had a son who had leg problems. And she said, that would be the one, not my older one. And the older one wanted to hear the tape. So as a little boy, 9 years old or something, he listened to that tape and heard that story. And that was it. Then when he was 21, his mom was driving him to university of photography, a very fine school upstate New York. And she fell asleep at the wheel, and she had the airbag and the seatbelt. And in those days, the passenger didn't get an airbag. So she walked away from the accident. He was left a paraplegic at 21 years old. And when he came on my show, somebody who was in a Buddhist group with him, and recommended that he be on my show. And he had died so many times from the multiple surgeries and the things he had to overcome as his body was breaking down from not being able to be used properly anymore. He had so many encounters with alien images or beings, so this is what he talks about on the show, and how during that time, this is what he feels helped him survive and get through, I think, was this interaction with some of these beings. So after 10 years or so in this condition, he decided he really needed to do his art again and couldn't figure out, because he couldn't use his hands, how he could do anything. So he taught himself how to paint with his mouth. And he paints these amazing portraits that you would see on the show. But I did not have any portraits. He hadn't sent me the ones of the aliens, but he talked about it. And then as a gift, he sent me one of his paintings. And it has such presence in this. It almost freaked me out a little to see this alien face in my kitchen, painted by this man as the image of what he's seeing. And when you share these stories, you find that other people have had similar visions. And you wonder, well, how could this be that all of us could have these different vision of the same kind of an image? And then all of a sudden you see them in Hollywood and they're grays and they have a name and all this other stuff goes on. So I've just had some kind of, I don't know if it's fear or this unknowingness that it makes me uncomfortable, because my own self, I've had one kind of alien kind of abduction experience when I was in my 20s. And after that happened, I was so scared that I never wanted to know anything about any of this ever again. But I can't not know, because they're coming on my shows.
And I mean that's it. I mean it really is. It's kind of it's a phenomenon at this point. I just recently, because I'm out here in Vegas, I had two interesting constant repeaters on my frequency. So I've got two people that will not leave me alone.
Uh,
Dolores Cannon and Art Bell. I don't know whether you've heard of either one of those.
my father was an Art Bell devotee. I even have a signed book from him. Not to me,
Oh,
that I got at a garage
no.
sale, but my dad was he lived by the Art Bell.
Well, Art Bell won't leave me alone because I'm a stone's throw away from his original radio station here in Nevada. And then on top of that, I've got like Dolores Cannon's in my ear complaining about the substandard of application of her ambalistic trance state that she used in her quantum healing or whatnot. And I've got this going on. A couple of months ago, I had Bruce Lee come to me, so I documented that on my channel, and that went for 2 episodes because he went into detail about how the curse that consumed him and his firstborn son and their untimely death prematurely in this lifetime. And that all was related to so many other decisions that he made. Now, it's interesting because when he came to me, it was on the 50th anniversary of his death. Did I know? I didn't know that. And like everyone, I know you can't make this stuff up, but people are like,
but I have to tell you, I didn't mention this when we started, and I was explaining to you how I didn't know I was going to be in a podcast, but that publishers kept telling me I needed to have a social media. And I was in a remote viewing group with this woman, and she was a PR lady. She was Art Bell's production manager for 9 years.
you can't make this stuff up.
Can't make that up.
You can't make it up. And he goes into depths on a lot of things that happened to him up to his final breath, and therefore the last 10 years of his life, which I'm not going to share on this podcast. We can share privately, but I mean, that stuff is like, whoa, high level conspiracy stuff that, I was like, whoa, I'm not sorry, buddy. I don't care how hard you tap on my back door. I'm not sharing that with the world. That is like on the next level.
In Las Vegas, do you know that man that's been funding all this research into consciousness?
No.
Can I I'm leaving you for a second here. I just want
to
pick something up to show you. And you might have to cut this show in half or something. I don't know, because you were right. I didn't have anything scheduled, so we're doing fine. His name is, I think it's Robert Bigelow. And he's in Las Vegas, and he's funding tremendous amounts of money into consciousness research.
Oh.
And what I'm going to show you here is something I just received. Oh, it's very heavy. I just received this a couple of weeks ago.
Wow.
Because he gifted it to all these different people through Jeffrey Mishlove, which, if your audience doesn't know, New Thinking Aloud with Jeffrey Mishlove is an amazing, he's been doing this for 30 years. It was on public television, and now he does it on the New Thinking Aloud site. So what they did was Bigelow put up $1 million in award money for people submitting papers to write about survival of consciousness after bodily death. And all the papers were reviewed, and then it was discussed as who would be the winner. And our Jeffrey Mishlove won the first $500,000 prize for his paper, which he deserved for his dedicated, continued. I mean, he's I think the only person who has a degree in parapsychology, or I'm not exactly, as I said, I'm never good on remembering the detail of what those things are, but he's done an amazing thing in this area of consciousness. So there was not a person I knew that deserved this award more than him. And we have a show on that if you want to watch it, the Jeffrey Mishlove. I had accidentally booked him for a podcast, and it was the day that they found out that was the day he won. And it was all coincidental. And
what a coincidence.
Yeah, no coincidence. I got to be the first one announcing his winning. Anyway, so this man funded this amazing book, and all the essays. Oops, there you go. And I think, God, I don't know what this camera, how to do this.
Yeah, I can see it.
There you are.
Yeah, yeah. Look at
Okay.
that.
And there it is,
Okay.
Proof of Survival of Consciousness Beyond Permanent Bodily Death. And it's
Wow.
the most beautiful book, all in with gold hardcover. And in it is each person's essay that was submitted.
Wow.
There are 5 volumes of this book. And what I heard about it, it was that it was being given to hospices and hospitals across the country. And Mr. Bigelow has funded all of this. And when I kept thinking, wait, how could a man with this much money that they're funding consciousness, this, and the Republicans or whatever it is, it doesn't seem like the right thing, and I can't even understand why are they involved with this? And then my husband and I were talking about it. Well, when you're that wealthy and you're a billionaire, you have everything, but you can't not die. And so that's what these people, I don't know, Elon Musk or whoever, all these very wealthy, they're all doing research into how can we sustain life longer? How can we live longer? How can we make the aging, how can you live to 150 or whatever it is? So they're funding those things because they would like to continue living.
Oh,
know?
slam dunk, my friend.
But
Slam dunk.
he is in Las Vegas, and that's where you should, I don't know what events he funds there, but this whole ceremony of presenting, and the people came from all over the world, the other winners, and they all won different amounts of money. The $500,000 was the big prize, and then the rest was, 50,000, 10,000, 20, like that.
Oh, well, I'll definitely have to look him up at some point. Have you
Oh, yeah.
spoken to him personally?
I have never met Mr. Bigelow, and I doubt he's going to be interested in some little person like myself. But what I do know is the people that he has funded or the work that he's done here. So I know those people who are benefiting from his investing in their, work on discussing about survival of the body after, or survival of consciousness after bodily death. And who's putting money into that? Our medical Western medical isn't doing things like this. So anyhow, so this is an amazing thing that something like this has been produced. And I haven't read I haven't read them, but there's so many essays, and they have each person, they tell about the person, and then the person shares their essay from years of research and experience that they wrote their paper about. So just the fact you didn't know about this, I'm so glad to have just told you about this, that things like this are going on in the place where you live.
It really is. When we talk about consciousness, I mean it wholeheartedly, and it's not a conceptual thing that most people in the social media space. You'll notice this, like you and I are very much the same in our understanding, our depth of experience, all these types of things. Very few people can do that. Most of the people on the social media sphere get a lot of benefit from getting clicks from our experiences because people just can't even imagine the type of depth of understanding. And so there's a level of this, hey, I'm conscious, but not really. Because if you're really conscious, you accept all things, right? Within Taoism, we call it accept and allow everything as one, being done by the Tao as all things. And so a lot of people say that, but they have this very they have a perception of their reality. And if you don't fit into that square peg into a square peg, a hole, then you're not validated. And so it sort of comes with, and I get a lot of this within my podcast. A lot of people, they get on and it's really exciting. And then some people get on but you and I clicked. But I get a lot of people that are like scientists or neurologists or experts, and they get on and they didn't realize I was who I was. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I made a very big mistake. Because all of a sudden I'm coming from all angles, my friend. I'm going to share with you everything from experiencing it, training in it, teaching people it, and any aspect of form of parapsychology, psychology, numerology, you name it, neurology, I can explain it in great detail. And so a lot of people, they flip out. They're like, I've got to go. I had a guy on 2 days ago, and he literally realized, and he's got a PhD in psychology, and he realized they did exactly what you did. Oh, I've been invited on a podcast. And then he realized what he was in the middle of, and he was like, I have to leave now. Thank you very much. It's just like, hey, hang on, come on, guys. We could all get along, but this is about, you and I are about consciousness. You and I are about sharing this experience to awaken someone's inner power. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people to realize, and I think this is something that we should share, Gail, is the universe doesn't have a moral compass. You know, everyone sort of tells you, oh, you need to be in a certain state. No, it's a frequency, and you will experience that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're having this angelic enveloped moment where it's all love, it's all things. It goes beyond that concept, that subject, because it's very subjective. I always tell people, people go, well, you have to come from love to attain a healing. Actually, you have to come from love is a baseline. Love's like subjective. You know, it could be razor blades and bunny rabbits to you. It's unicorns and rainbows to me. It's then you level up to gratitude. I can give you $1 or a compliment. You're going to receive it as you're going to be grateful for that. So that's the next level up. And finally, I look at it as accepting all things. So the people are like, that's kind of weird. Would you call that being authentic? That's again subjective. You want to be immersed with everything. There is no title. We're not having a specific emotional state. You're shifting into this consciousness. That means you are everything. You are the camera. You are Gail. You are the table. You're not going, I'm in the bliss of love and all these things are happening and angels are flying around me. This is all Hollywood stuff that makes you separated. You will never experience what Gail and I speak of until you understand nothing has title. And it's that present moment is the only moment that you're going to get the real deal. And that's that part that people freak out about because it's now.
Yes. I don't know what to say except that how happy I am that you found me. And I wondered, and I think I asked that to you in an email, was how you, I was like, oh, this guy asked me to be on the show. How did he find me? So I wasn't sure how you did that, because how did you do that?
Well, you know, for me, the universe always guides me in the right direction, i.e. my teachers, which, you know, some people will go, well, that's a lower frequency. No, it's just how it trends. I like it. It's like my blankie. I can see Lao Tzu as clear as I see you, or it's nothing more than light or information. I enjoy hanging out with my family, having conversations, or I can just be at one with a monologue, which is very clear. Because it's the dialogue to monologue. And most people get caught in the dialogue, which makes them separated. The monologue is when you are getting true source information. And so
I don't see them, but the reason that Zagda came back to my house after she left to initiate me as a shaman was because she said I had so many spirits around me. And that meant she had to do this. And then I said to however we spoke to each other, this has been told to me by psychics or readers or whatever, and they always say, oh, the room is filled, you have so many spirits around you. And I kept thinking, who are these spirits? I don't know who these spirits are, except that I always feel like ancestors are there for me, but I've never had this feeling like, oh, it's the Jesus or it's the Buddha or it's any famous. I've never felt like there was any high spiritual being I connected to or any of that kind of thing, but that I was sure they were right, that there were spirits around me because I felt that's what's protected me through life. And I feel that that's the reason I'm actually sitting here today talking, is because of those. Even though I can't see them or tell you who they are, I know that they're here. But that's about as far as I've gotten with that. And that one of them is very tall.
Well, I'll tell you this. You speak to the universe and the universe will provide. I think your curiosity of perhaps maybe elaborating or making a more refined sensory perception of that particular experience is what's bringing you into the two of us merging together and realizing that we've had a bond and a friendship that's lasted well beyond this lifetime. And it just is. It's an instantaneous thing. So with that said, I will say that I will invite you on the journey, my friend, and I will share everything that I know that could help you obtain a higher state of consciousness if you choose to want to elaborate on these very sensory perceptions, because
That's a
there's a reason
wonderful
why. There's a
invitation.
reason. What's that?
I said, that's a wonderful invitation.
Hey, look, that's what we're here for. I have no problems sharing anything. A lot of the things that I teach are so removed from what someone might regurgitate as a traditional sort of Taoist practice. From my teachers, I'm sharing stuff that has been secret source for thousands of years, and I'm just bringing it to the community. And, you know, it's for people to create awareness. Before that, Taoists would live and die with it to their breast, to their chest, or moreover, due to the cycle of how spirituality, atheism, religion has cycled through human history. Most cases, Taoists were slaughtered and murdered because they were the secret source to the emperor. So, you know, all these types of things sort of like immersed to nothing. And it's like, this is a vehicle. I've been given these tools. I ascend way beyond the tools that are handed to me. But if these tools can be used for with other people raising their consciousness, then absolutely they need to use them. And that's really my journey through this lifetime, is to share these tools of consciousness so that you can awaken whatever's within you, no matter who it is.
Some people, it's becoming very popular now. A lot of people are doing microdosing and macrodosing with psilocybin mushrooms. And when I was a teenager, that's when I did all my psychedelics. So it was like from 1969 to 71 was when I experienced psychedelics. So, you know, I had a few acid trips and mescaline trips and peyote and all the different things, and had different experiences than my other teenage friends. They would be experiencing things with the music and sounds, and, you know, I would be seeing the lights and the colors and all this, but I would be talking to dead people. And none of my friends were talking to dead people when they'd have these tripping things happen. And so they couldn't understand me. So I couldn't understand what they were having happen, that it seemed so small or little or something. And they couldn't understand that I was not interested in the color and things as much as I was as this other stuff that was happening, that I could speak to people whose bodies weren't there, you know. So I never did a psychedelic again until one day in my 30s. My husband and I decided to take a mescaline trip in my orchard, and I had not had a psychedelic, and I haven't had one since then. But it showed me, when I did the drug, and it was a very mild trip, and I ended up feeling the presence of my husband's, what would be my father-in-law, who I never met because he was deceased before we were married. I had a complete connection with him. He was sitting there right in the room telling me all these things. But what I was seeing most was that my husband had been raised by a father with the hugest heart of love that I could ever imagine. And I didn't have that kind of upbringing. So when I saw the amount of love that emanated from this soul that was no longer with a body to this child that was a grown man, and I'm sitting in my bedroom, you know, after the trip was over, I said, I'm so glad we did this, because for these last 30 years, I have been able to do all these things without any psychedelic drug. And there's no difference in what I'm seeing when I'm on a psychedelic experience than what I'm seeing without a psychedelic. And it was a great teaching that I never would have known had I not tried it 30 years later once.
Well, you see, you know, Gail's admission here is something that people chase the dragon. They get a glimpse, they get a taste, but they can't acquire access because they compartmentalize things. So that's why it's so popular to do these micro doses, because instead of like, people hear our stories and they're like, oh my goodness, wow, this is amazing. What mushrooms were you taking? No, I live this every day. This is me on all the time. And it's like, one big, you want to call it one big trip? I'm on one big trip. I'm experiencing, all the senses of the universe right now through my whole physical body because I want to, and because I can access it. And it's just a mastery, but there's no difference between Gail, myself, and anyone in the audience. Right. And it's finding a path, right? And so Gail validated it with herself that she was experiencing all these things in absent of any sort of extra additive. Mm-hmm. And I would always say this to people: I can show you, you can take DMT and have the most crazy experience for 20 minutes.
Never tried that.
Right. I can show you how to access your own DMT and have the same DMT experience for 3 days, because it doesn't end. It doesn't leave you, because you start to develop these skills. And that's all it is. It's like becoming the master, the keeper, the creator of those 50 trillion cells that are in your physical body that give you the register. This is all attention, intention. These words that we're speaking of, that Gail and I are speaking of, more experiences that we've had throughout our lifetime. But now, today more than ever, consciousness and intention are still things no one can measure. And so when we speak on it from our experience. And how do we get to this state? Well, I have certain methods. Gail has certain methods. You get there. And once you start repeating it, it becomes faster and faster and faster, the access, where literally, it's more a Hollywood. Tom Campbell went over this in relation to consciousness gives you this sort of like what you can handle. So you're at this place. So for, he references young men. So it's like the young men will get into, they want to do astral projection, out of body experiences, all things of that nature. So they're fighting the good and evil, the demons, all this type of stuff, because you want that to be experienced from consciousness is handing what you are fantasizing about, what you're getting your hands around. And so then it is given to you. It's like the old expression, be careful what you wish for, is how it's handed to you. And so the higher you ascend to this frequency, these types of things don't occupy that space. It's just part of the sensory perception development that once you access that higher consciousness, you can filter through, just as Gail does, information however she sees fit, whether it's remote viewing or more something that's personal in its nature to the individual. But that doesn't mean that you have to go through this whole processes. It's instantaneous. And that's the part that people find really sort of like hard to digest, because they've got Hollywood versions of it where, I've got to do the retreat. I've got to go and, find my favorite spiritual guide. And they're all very valid. I'm not dismissing any of this stuff.
I doubted my abilities and things because I didn't do those things. So I thought to myself, well, I can't be as good as this person. They studied remote viewing under this person. They took this class. They did this. They did that. But I did nothing. And I could just do remote viewing. So, so I figured, no, I can't be that good because they did this and I didn't do that. It's taken me this long to separate this out in my mind that it's okay to have done it my route.
57,000 times, my friend. 57,000 times. Now she's a believer. Hallelujah. It's like I always tell people to use the parking ferry. Have you ever heard of this concept, the parking ferry?
I have a special statue in my car because I have a reputation throughout my family. And the only place it doesn't work is if I have my sisters in the car who are very negative about this and we're in Manhattan. Other than that, it works anywhere in the world. I can do it in Manhattan, but not if my sisters are in the car.
Now the parking ferry, right? She's 1,000% right. The parking ferry is what I call the wet your whistle entry level manifestation. And people are like, well, what does that mean? It means that you have this dialogue in your mind quietly, whether you've got a friend or family around you. You just tell yourself inside your head, you're driving along. You know what? Gail and San Qing said, if I think about a parking space, it'll materialize. No one can hear me. I'm not invested in it, whatever, And so it happens once. It happens twice. It happens 25 times. And they're like, there's something here. There's something going on that this happens instantaneously. And I like people to understand it's because it's lack of emotional content. You're not caring about the outcome. It's like a dismissal. It's like, whatever. But healing and manifestation and magic are the same. And this is where Gail can get into instant access of information because it's not hers. She's not invested in it. It's not an emotional state. She may experience emotions from the material, but she is able to access the present moment to get that information. And that is a mastery.
Well, I think that uh, working with all these different people and learning all these different things, and yet I still go back to my exactly what you're saying, following whatever it is that however it happens for me, and always I always find that the other part is that I feel it's important for your audience to remember is that I'm always thankful and grateful and appreciative when any of those things occur or happen. I never take it for granted. I never take it that, oh, I can just do this. I'm a so and so, and this, oh, yeah, I'm a blah, blah, blah. Never do I feel like that. I always feel like, well, maybe I can do this. That's my intent. We'll see what happens.
It's funny. This is what I experience, and it sounds almost identical. I wake up and I experience a miracle, a manifestation, a shift of consciousness as if it's the first time it happened. And it's so exciting to me. It's like I've never seen it, but I've seen it 1,000 times. I've never seen it before. I mean, and that excitement is just what fuels me. And the gratitude, as you mentioned, the gratitude, it doesn't come from anything. It's just like you get to experience it. And there was a moment many decades ago when I used to, regret going to sleep thinking I'm going to lose this juice. I'm not going to have the juice. And that was something that it didn't take me too long. It took me about a month or so. And then I was like, then it was this setting of knowing. But I also had this entry level, right?
I understand the juice because when my dad died, we were taking care of him 24/7, round the clock. So very little sleeping, and just this was he was the most important person in my life. And so losing him was a very difficult loss. And Dean calls up, it's been a year since my dad has passed away. And he says, I have a new experiment I want you to come in and try. And I tell him and my husband, I can't because my mojo's gone. I said, after my dad died, I've lost everything. I can't even connect to him. I don't know what's going on. I'm just like a lost soul or whatever. And I say, I think it's it, just like you're saying, that the juice was gone and I could never connect again to this place, that I was so emptied of everything. And my husband, who's been a very encouraging person through these things, said, just go down to Dean. I know you're going to do something. Just go. I said, nothing's going to happen. I have no more psychic anything left in me. So he says, just go and do it. You'll see. Just go. So I go and I'm apologizing to Dean before the experiment starts and saying, I don't think I can do anything again, And he puts me in the Faraday cage. And this will be my last story because I realize we're really talking for a long time. And
I'm okay with it, my friend. I'm completely fine with it.
He's got this new device that's a photon machine, and it costs $20,000. Mm-hmm. So they had to, raise a lot of funding to be able to purchase such an item. It was for the Institute of Noetic Sciences for Dean Radin's work. And he's very excited about this new machine, and he's doing testing, and that's why he wants me to come in and try it. And I don't even understand what a photon is. I have no idea even what a photon is. So he puts me in the room and tells me, okay, here's this long black box. I want you to focus your intention, and the computer graph will show when you're interfering with the laser because it's actually happening in real time. So you put your mind in there and upset the wave, and it'll show up on the computer. So we do the first one, and I don't understand at all what he said. So I'm sitting there in the room with it, and I'm looking at the thing, and he comes back and he says, I said, I really didn't get that. Can we try it again? So he closes the door again. And, I don't know if you've ever seen a Faraday cage, but it looks like a giant walk-in refrigeration unit, but nicely designed inside. And it's all sealed for electromagnetic interferences. And when they shut the door, it's like you're in pitch black if you didn't have a light on or whatever. So I'm in there, and I'm having that feeling like I have no juice left. There's nothing in me. And all of a sudden, this huge amount of anger or something fills up inside me. And excuse me for any of your listeners. I looked at the machine and I said, you know what? I'm going to blow the fucking thing up. I've had enough. So the minute I say I'm going to blow the whole fucking thing up, everything goes pitch black in the Faraday cage. And when I say black, you can't see your hand. It's pitch black. There is no light in there. And I'm afraid of the dark, unfortunately. And for 1 second, I'm like, my heart's palpitating. I'm in the pitch dark, and Dean opens the door. And I said, I'm sorry. I told the thing, I just was going to blow you up. I said, and everything went black. He said, not only did it go here, he said, there isn't lights on in any building in the entire institute. And I've checked. It's a perfectly calm, sunny day out. There's no PG&E workers. There's nothing going on. He said, you just took the electricity out for this. It was like 2 seconds or whatever it was, but enough to stop everything, in the whole campus of a place. And he comes back and he said, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to write this up right away. I need some pictures. This is an anomaly, but I can't include it in part of the experiment because when you blew everything up, you took away the data that the computer would be. And I was looking at him going, I kept apologizing. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to break your machine. I know you just got the machine. And I'm feeling like, oh my God, what have I done? And he goes to the back and he touches a bunch of wires and everything turned back on again. And I was so relieved. But it has to do with the thing that I'm trying to share, which is, no, I did not lose my mojo. I did not lose my juice. I was just on a temporary time of needing to really rebuild myself after such a grieving lost time.
Yeah.
And it couldn't have shown me in a better way than that. I mean, and how sure I was nothing was going to happen.
Well, I mean, and this is that moment, you want to double test, right? Triple test, quadruple test, the simplicity of being human, introspective, analytical, cynical in its nature, fear, fight or flight, all of the above, and then the need to be in this state they call heteroaction, which what you start, you must finish. This kind of cycle of behavior is just humanist. And so you get into this when you tune yourself up. I need people to understand this. Once that it never leaves you. Once you tune yourself up, it only gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And to most cases, I've got students that many decades, and they're like, just when I thought it couldn't get any stronger, it gets stronger. Because it's the same type of thing. You have this amplitude. I remember specifically the first time I had entree, and I feel like maybe I got spoiled, but when I first started this many decades ago, I was exposed to distance healing, which is a concept for most people. It starts with the idea of entanglement, quantum healing, all that kind of good stuff. And so I just got out of this training, and I get home, and this girl I wanted to see calls me and says, look, I'm not going to make it. That's too bad. I just started my training. And she goes, I can't see you today. And I'm like, oh, I'm really disappointed. She goes, I just blew my ankle out. It's the size of a watermelon. And I'm like, oh, okay, what, I'll see you next week. She's about to get off the phone. I go, whoa, hang on 1 second. She's like, what? I'm like, now remember rotary phones. This is a whole different deal for all those people out there. And my kids would go, what are you talking about, Dad? What do you mean? Was there anything other than a cell phone back in the day? Yes, there was. So, and she's like, okay, what do you want? I'm like, let me try this distance healing thing. Now, I attribute my access to consciousness to accepting everything at face value, just straight up as it is. No in-betweens. It's right in front of you. And so I read through this formula, this ritual that was given to me as a priest in training. And I'm like, okay, I read it in my mind. And then I finished it off with a spoken incantation. It was very simple. So I said, just entertain me for 5 seconds. So she goes, well, what do you think you're going to do? You're like, you're 3 suburbs away. I'm here. Well, yeah. Look, just entertain me. And so I read through it in my mind. Then I speak the incantation, which is simple. Heal, 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 heal. That's it. And I get, we'll add adjectives. I guess it's a popular thing. Let's go for it. She went, "What the fuck?" And I was like, "Whoa, what's going on?" She goes, "What the fuck are you up to?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what am I up to?" And she goes, "My ankle shrunk before my very eyes right now, and I'm standing on it." I go,
Wow.
"What kind of crazy witchery, trickery shit that you're into?" And I was like, "Whoa, you're full of shit. You're full of shit. You're full of shit." Anyway, I drive over to her place. I get there. She takes before and after photos. Her mother's sitting there in their lounge room, very affluent family, right? So they were sort of like, the mother never believed in doctors. She doesn't believe in doctors, but she would drink a bottle of vodka and 5 packs of cigarettes a day. And she was like in her 80s, didn't believe in anything. Just, I don't believe in doctors. Don't get me anywhere near one. And like, she's sitting there puffing away, and I'm like, "What's going on here?" And she's like, "This is amazing." And I'm like, "You guys are full of shit right now, right?" And she's like, "No, take a look." I'm like, "This is unreal. This is like beyond unreal. I don't know what you're doing, or the trickery, or how you're doing this with a Polaroid, whatever the hell you're doing. I don't believe you." And the mother's like, "I always knew you were a healer." And I was like, what is going on here? What kind of weirdness is this? And so I took it at face value. She experienced it. In retrospect, I could feel the healing, but then it gets even better, Gal. So the mother's got a foot problem. And this is where I got a crash course. You want to talk about a trajectory into a whole nother level of awareness. It happened very quickly. So she goes, "Look, I got a foot problem." And I'm like, look, this is new to me. All right. Like, how about I come and see you in the next day or two? You're coming tomorrow. I'm like, "Oh, okay." Right. Now, this woman sits in her chair and she's got a distended stomach. She can't see her feet. Like, if she's sitting there, she has a foot on a stool. You can't see her feet. And she goes, "I've got these pains in my feet." And I'm like, "Okay. Right. What do you want me to, I don't know. I guess what? I'll just wipe my hands over it or whatever." And so I turn up the following day, and I get down there and kneel down there, and I pull the sock off, and I'm greeted with a gangrenous foot that should be amputated, right? And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm going, in my mind, I'm like, "Hospital right now, let's go." Now, my guide, Latsu, goes, "No." I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, "What do you mean, no? What exactly do you want me to?" And she's like, "How's it going down there? What's going on?" And I'm like, I mean, in my mind, you're going to the hospital. Latsu goes, "No, you're going to watch your healing." I'm like, "Really? Oh, I'd like to see that." And this is me with a dialogue with him. And I'm like, "There's no fucking way you're going to heal this." And I literally for 40 minutes watched that flesh go from gangrenous back to pink.
Wow.
And I've only experienced these anomalies, these synchronicities now for the last 30 years. This is like a regular thing that I see on a daily basis. And I was having a joke with Tom, because this is a year. People come to me and they're like, "My grandma's in a coma. They're telling her she's going to die in 24 hours. And I'll be like, "Don't worry about it." Boom. And the next minute, she gets up the next day. Her vitals are regulated. She's all good. And Tom's like, "Yeah, I've done that before. That's, it's part of it's part of healing." And I'm like, this to me, I've seen this 1,000 times. You name it, I've seen it. Cancer, sickness, anything, flesh being, and the common denominator, and you can validate this from yourself, is when I see the flesh heal, it wiggles. It wiggles like it's almost like you're having a moment where it's like an oasis, and the flesh will actually wiggle back to its original state. And you can't make this stuff up. This is the kind of stuff where you get your mind blown, beyond blown, beyond blown, beyond blown. And so, when you get into these states of consciousness, I'm like, "Oh, this is the shift. So let's go to spoon bending, metal bending, which you're familiar with, right?
Yes.
This is the state, right? And it accounts for anything, right? So when
Yes.
you can show the audience an example, right? Because
Oh,
when
yeah.
you mention moonspan, and what happens is there's 3 layers to an amateur to a professional spoon bender or metal bender per se. First, it starts with a little physical force, and then you focus on it, and it kind of melts like butter as you put your intention to wherever it is you want it to melt. Then you get to the next level where you hold an object and it melts like butter in front of your eyes as if you're having an LSD out-of-body experience. And then, of course, I call graduation day when you take a fork and you bend the tongs either way, just like that, and people freak out and go, what the fuck is this? How is that possible? Hey, we're adding adjectives right now. I feel very comfortable using them at this point. So, you know, and so the flesh part is how I witness it all the time. So, you know, point in fact in matter, my kids are chasing each other. I use this because this is the most recent, a couple of days ago. Kid grabbed one of the other kids. They ate the dirt face first. They get up. They've got a face that's swollen. The lip is swollen like a baseball. And I'll just sit there and I'll go heal, 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 heal. And you watch the lip just go whoop, boom, done. Back to business as usual. Now, that is a consciousness thing that you and I understand, because you can't do it. I can't go, oh, Daddy's so upset. Are you okay? Is everything all right? No, I don't take anything. I just sit there and I just literally become one with all things and go heal, 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 heal. Because if I'm the universe, if you truly embody this and it's not some bullshit conceptual thing that so many people just ramble on about, you are at one with all things. So you're not asking yourself, hey, universe, can you help me heal this person? No, you have access as the universe to alter that consciousness as we speak. That's the only way you can do it. It's the only way it's possible. I can't sit there and go, oh my goodness, my child's all upset and sad and got an injury and, oh, please, God, help me. It won't happen. Does this make sense to you?
Yes, absolutely. And there's two things. You use this word, and I find this to be a very important word to me, which is magic. And I feel like when I see these different things that people are trying to prove or test or do different experiments to show or do amazing statistical graph things or whatever, I feel like some of these things are what they are supposed to be, and it's magic. And you're not supposed to know how it works or how it happened or how can you teach how to do this? I think some things are magic and they're just meant to be magic. It's the best word I can describe for it. I want to show you, I didn't believe in spoon bending until I was at a remote viewing conference, and a man named Jack Hook, who was the most well-known in spoon bending, was having a spoon bending party, and he throws out, hundreds of pieces of silverware on the hotel floor, and everybody grabs whichever one is calling to you. And exactly like you said, a little old woman who was a school teacher, nothing about any of this. She was just there to see what her student was doing. And she's holding the spoon and she's sitting behind me and she's not doing anything. And exactly like you said, the spoon just bent in half. And I was like, whoa, like I'm yelling, come somebody see this. This little old lady's got a spoon bending in half and she's just holding it, right? So that seemed like, wow, I didn't believe that till I saw it. And then I tried to do a spoon and I couldn't, my spoon wasn't doing anything for me. So I put it back into the group of silverware and I said, who's calling to me? And this fork jumped up. So I said, all right, I'll try the fork. So here's the fork. And I'm not a bender. There are some people who are professional benders.
Yeah.
But you can see that I wrapped it around two times.
Beautiful.
And just like what you said with the tongs, I just touched the tongs like this and they bent in half. And the best way I could describe it, because I've never been able to bring it back, is that there's this moment when they're showing you to do this, you're screaming at the silverware. Bend, bend, bend. Yeah. That's the method. Yeah. And you're screaming, bend, bend, and you're holding it. But there's a moment where all of a sudden the metal just heats up. And it's like visually I'm seeing molecules jumping up and down. And in that
Wiggling.
Yeah, oh, right, wiggling.
Just like the flesh wiggles.
Oh, yes. Think about that. In that moment, everything becomes just pliable. You just go like this and the fork just bends around. So I was blown away and I thought it was wow. And I I came home and I was showing people, and we were doing a few bendings here and there, but I didn't really. I'm not a bender. There are some people that have the talent for this, and I had one on my show named Donna Rebadow, and Donna Rebadow clinically died in a drowning, and she was in her 60s. And when she came back, she discovered she wanted to do things all about consciousness. And so she went to the Monroe Institute and she was studying consciousness. And there was a class about spoon bending. And she thought, I'll just try that. Well, she could bend anything. Hundreds of spoons and forks she's bent. She makes them into jewelry now. I went out and we actually met each other. I've been meeting my podcast people because we're becoming friends. So I flew out to Colorado. She invited me to stay at her house. We don't know each other. And we had an absolute blast and wonderful time together. When we had my show, she had sent me some spoons to bend myself. She said, people send me spoons and forks all the time. She sends me the spoons, and on the show we go, and I was very jealous of her because she spends 4 times around, and I've only done a 2 times around spend. I got to do a 4, you know. So we take the spoon, and we're on the show, and she has us bend the spoons over and over and again. So I get a couple of twirls out of this one, and I get 3 out of this one. So I was very happy that I had a 3er. You know, I couldn't compete with her 4s, but we did it on the show live. And I was shocked that I didn't know if I could bend it right then and there on the show with her, but I did.
And that magnitude of that frequency, Gail, though, it is palpable.
Well,
it's a palpable state.
You're the first person to ever describe the spoon bending stages exactly like I've seen them. We go out to the restaurant and we meet another friend, Sean, so that he was another podcast person. And we all got together and we had dinner and we went up to the mountains. And we had this wonderful 5 days with 3 people who've never met each other except on my podcast. And while we're at the table waiting for the Italian food to be served, I'm looking at her and she's got her silverware. And she said, yeah, my roommate gets very upset with me in restaurants. She says, don't do anything. I told you not to ruin their silverware. She's not touching it. And the fork tines are turning up as we're waiting for the food to come. And she's taking it. I got to hide it quickly. She says, yeah, I don't want them to know. Get another replacement fork here quick, you know. So you described exactly the levels of how it works. I'm not a bender, but I can do this. And so can people in your audience.
Yeah.
She is a bender, a natural bender, and it just comes and flows through her. And she just sits there and touches the end of the fork and it just starts twirling. So I never would have believed any of that. When you told me that 10 years ago, I'd say, oh, it's probably a parlor trick. That's, what's his name? Uri Geller's trick, la, la, la. Well, audience, it's not a trick. It truly is possible. Anyone can do it. I think it's even easier for children to do it. And it has something to do with a focus of intention and knowing exactly at that moment where the metal turns to liquid. And in that liquid moment, it just fluidly will do whatever you ask it to do.
And I mean, it's a feeling. It's an absolute feeling that you cannot deny.
No.
It's like everything changes. As Gail said, the molecules change. But what I want to reference is that's how healing occurs for me with flesh.
That's
and so that's kind of exactly the same thing. And I think the only limitation is you. So it really, when you hear what we're saying, realize that can be realized by yourself instantaneously. Just the acceptance of that. And that's the power of what we talk about when it comes to group consciousness, is that you can instantly access it yourself. And it doesn't have to be a long road. Just like Gail said, it's like I didn't have any formal training. There wasn't anything else. It didn't have to be. It doesn't have to be.
Right.
It doesn't have to be. It just has to be, where are you at in your level of acceptance, or where are you at in realizing what the truth is? And the truth will speak to you through the very experience that you're having in your reality. It'll be either something that is still formed as a concept, or something that you may be transitioning from something that you were handed to you as an idea, and then it's materialized in your reality through consciousness, and you develop these skills.
Mm-hmm.
But the feeling is probably the most paramount thing, which is when you're thinking, you are not knowing. When you're knowing, you're feeling. 100% the slam dunk of all things.
You know, I have no idea what time it is. Oh. Well, I think it must be lunchtime.
Yeah, right. I think it's lunchtime. Well, look,
I'm
I
going to have you on as a guest. I'll talk to you
yeah,
privately about that
yes.
afterwards.
Yeah, let's talk privately and then let's make that happen because I'm just so grateful to be in the presence of an incredible being like yourself, but moreover, just resonating because it's like you talk the talk, you walk the walk. You cannot explain the things that we experience unless you experience them. And so, and it doesn't matter how much someone tries to wrap their mind around the thesaurus and imagination, unless it's experienced, you can't describe the detail of what we speak of. It just is what it is. And there's nothing wrong with it not being your experience yet, because that the whole point of us sharing this is for you to materialize it and create it in your reality.
Exactly. And that there isn't anyone that does it better or more or anything than anyone else. And that it's all accessible for everybody. It's no
100.
special thing.
100%, my friend. So, in closing, before we, in turn, I'm going to be on your podcast. You're going to be back on my podcast. You're going to be regular. It just is what it is. I want to ask you, what's your definition of consciousness?
I don't have a definition of consciousness.
Beautiful.
I don't.
Right.
Mm.
And it's like that is probably the most instant realized access, and that's how I feel. It's now. For me, it's now. It is. That in its entirety is consciousness. Now, or moreover, as Tom Campbell would say, it's a awareness with options. Being aware you have options.
Oh, interesting. Awareness with options. Very interesting.
Yeah, right. The simplicity of it. So I'm going to put all your social media under this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to ask you what is going on with Gail today that you can share with the audience.
Today, as I said, I'm involved in an experiment with Dean. I'm finishing the last chapter of my book, A Small, Medium, at Large. I'm preparing for my March, where I have 4 or 5 podcast interviews that I'm doing on top of it. We're going to have a book release party here for our dear friend Stanley Krippner, who has just published his memoirs of an incredible life, 91 years old. His mind is as sharp as can be, and he just wrote a 900-page memoir in his last year. I am thrilled to be surrounded by people that are 90 and older and have brilliant, sharp minds. And it's inspirational to be with them. And I like to cook food or bring them whatever I can do to help them. And I'm looking forward to meeting more amazing people like yourself in this interesting social media thing that I never thought I'd be part of. And hopefully next time I see you, I won't look as pale because it won't be rainy Northern California weather for a while. We'll get some sunshine. And I don't know. I think the most important thing I always keep telling people is to share their stories, because stories can heal.
Yeah. I mean, that's the foundation of all things. It's so powerful. Well, with that said, I'm really looking forward to going on your podcast. I'm really looking forward to talking with you again, because I don't think there's anything we can't talk about.
Here, I never give a plug. Let me give my website so that anyone who's not reading it or they're, listening, it's all lowercase, a small, medium, at large .co. And that website will show you all the different shows I've been on, plus all the shows I'm on, and there'll be stories there I wrote for a site called Medium. So I have very interesting stories in there, like one's called Running from Vegans. Another one is you would see all the papers and things of the Mind Dynamics Times. There's a little, they're all like 5 or 7 minute little stories. And I think there's about 10 of them on the site called medium.com. And you just type in Gail Hayssen, Hayssen, and you'll see those stories. But I think my website really will access everything and tell you all kinds of things. But there's some really beautiful photos there of me with the Mongolian people, me with the Huichol Indians of Mexico, and so the different characters in the stories that we've talked about. So if they have a chance, take a look at the website.
Absolutely, guys, go out there. I want to thank you. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. And I'm very grateful to have a new friend. And I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. And yeah, we have just begun. As I always like to tell people, like, man, I can't believe this. Shifu, this has happened, that happened. It's never ending. And I'm like, we have just begun.
I feel the same way. So this is what it's like that. It's, what's his name? Bogart in, when he's leaving in
Casablanca.
Casablanca. And he said, the new friendship is just beginning. So I feel the same with you. And my words are real. I look forward to our next encounter.
Yeah, I can't wait. I really
Okay.
can't wait.
Well, you enjoy your wife and 6 children.
Yes.
I'm really impressed that you have 6 children. And I would have liked to have had 6. I had 3, and I'm grateful for the 3. But mazel tov to you. And I look forward to our next time together. And
I'm
thank
really
you
looking
so
forward
much
to
for
it.
being a guest on your show. I don't really feel like I was a guest. I just feel like I was visiting a friend.
Well, exactly that. I mean, that's the best conversation, is when you can really embody it.
Yes.
And that's the exciting part.
Well,
So in closing, thank you, Gail. Thank the audience. And I am your humble servant and seafood Taoist master, Sun Qing. And I'll see you on the next one, guys.